Hey, there he is.
Hey, there it is.
Jack Brunson of Guitarcheology. Jack's
Hey, you said it
Guitarcheology.
right on the first time. No one ever says it right on the first time, you know?
Guitarcheology. I like it, dude. Was
Like,
it like a sit down at the six pack one night and try and figure out the name, or did
no,
it
it
just
was when
come
I
to you?
when I was working at Guitar Mill, I just had the idea to do this and I kept running through get names, and then I told Jamie, my wife, one day I was like thinking about calling it Guitar Archaeology because at the time the American Pickers thing was really big,
Oh
and
yeah, right. Yeah.
yeah, it still is. I mean, I guess to a degree, but it was in its heyday, then. So, and then one day I said, "Yeah, I'm thinking about calling it Guitarcheology," and I was like, "Wait a minute, wait a minute,"
That's pretty
and
clever.
so like I thought about together, and then that's what and then I found out that a guy wrote for Guitar World or Vintage Guitar or one of those, and he wrote a
Oh yeah.
column called Guitarcheology.
Ah,
And so I decided that so that people wouldn't get that confused, I decided to put my name in front of it for better or for worse.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's for better because you are the face of Guitarcheology. Your
Yeah.
social media, your face is all over the social media.
Yeah.
If you take a day off, you're holding up a sign. We're taking the day off today. Blah blah, blah. I mean, it's your story. It's who you are, and why not put a face to it?
Yeah. I tell people maybe if I had it to do over, I may or may not have done that because everyone who comes through the door wants to talk to me, like
Yeah,
specifically,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
there's a lot of them and only one of me, so that gets kind of
Right.
exhausting.
Sure.
But yeah, I for the most part, it's been fine. And I kind of appreciate, I mean, I know to a certain extent it's done me a lot of favors because I'm selling myself to an extent. And I've always had just sort of a natural ability with people. Like it's just always been a thing.
Cool. Very
My
cool.
mom would leave me alone at, Walmart when I was 2, and I'd have people talking to me, when I was very little. So I've just always been really good and really comfortable with people. And I think that has done me
Excellent.
more favors than just about anything else.
Oh, absolutely. If you're the spokesperson, I mean, Apple was Steve Jobs and, Colonel Sanders and KFC. I mean, why not? You're the brand.
Yeah, every good ship needs a leader, I suppose.
Absolutely. And a leader that communicates with the passengers and the crew.
Yeah, I it's and right now I have a great crew too, which is really really nice. I'm pretty lucky, and we've had, I don't know, I've probably hired a half a dozen to a dozen people, in and
Okay.
out now, and I finally kind of settled on we have a crew now that I like a lot and I'm really happy with. Still kind of got one major hole in that I'm the only person who's really good with the people and goes out and does the customer stuff.
Okay.
But I've got Cade, who's a wonderful lead tech. I've got an online sales specialist who's really good at
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And then I've got a teenager who is remarkable. He's a remarkable tech to be 16 years old. He probably
Wow.
sets Floyd's up better than anyone in the store. And
Oh, well,
I
that's
asked
saying
him,
a
I was like,
lot.
"Do you like Floyd's?" And he was like, "No, I don't. I've only got one." And now he's finally got a guitar with one, but he's like, "They just make sense to me." And I was like, "Well, you're doing a great job, Jude. So just keep at it."
And there
Uh,
is a difference. Just because it makes sense doesn't mean he likes it. No one likes Floyd's.
yeah. No, I don't think he has one now, but like he just man, that kid can set up a Floyd buttery smooth in 45 minutes. He's
Wow, that's
competent,
impressive.
Yeah, he's
Very cool, man.
it's funny because he texts like a better than some 30-year-olds, I've seen, but he also comes with all the trappings of being a 16-year-old boy. So, sometimes he does like stupid teenager stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah,
Sure,
I
sure.
forget yeah, I forget all the time that you're not even 18 yet.
Wow. So how did you find him? Did you put a classified out and he answered, or did he come in one day and
No,
say, "Hey, hire me"?
no. He started coming into the store. He was building his own projects, and
Ah, cool.
after about the second parts caster where he'd come in for a set of tuners or a pick guard or a set of pickups or something, I said, "Are you building these out?" And I said, "All right, bring me, show me what you built." And he brought one in, and I mean, it was a Strat and it had problems, but like he was like, "This is the first one I've ever assembled." And I was like, honestly, this is not too bad. All things considered, you could have done a lot worse. And so
Wow.
I said, I tell you what, you want, an incredibly part-time job. Just come on down. I'll teach you some stuff. You can
Smart.
help out. And, he works for me about 10 hours a week. It's really not a lot, just after school kind of stuff.
Well,
But it's more
he's
about,
cutting his teeth.
I sense the natural aptitude in him, and
There you go.
he likes it, and he had the interest. I tell a lot of people you can teach a lot about guitars. You can teach, history of guitars, you can teach lutherie, you can teach all of that. But it'll only be so received as the person is interested.
Right.
So like I look for people when I'm hiring and putting people in my store that have the interest for first and foremost. Like interest to me comes before experience. And when I say interest, I mean not just like a passing interest, like I wake up and I love this, and this is my hobby of life. This is what I like to do. And the rest can be taught, but you can't really force people to fake or get into that spot of being that interested and that passionate about it. So to me, finding people who are passionate about gear is first and foremost. And then
Amen.
tech skill, I'll take that over. I went to MI. In some cases, I'll even like take being really passionate over, like I worked at here, there, yonder, Gibson or MIRC or Guitar Mill or whatever. But to me, that is the being passionate about it, because this is an industry where none of us are making a ton of money. None of us are raking it in like Jeff Bezos or anything. And really, the goal is to make a career in guitars. It's not really a get rich quick kind of industry,
Right.
And so I look for people who are as passionate and who have kind of set expectations of like, I'm not going to break into this and make crazy money.
Yeah.
I'm going to break into this and do something I love and make a decent living doing it. And we pay as well as we can, but again, small businesses are rife in this industry. So it's I just can not pay as big as some of these big corporations. So there is sort of the trade-off of like, I'm very understanding with my employees, and you learn a lot on the clock. But you probably could make, it would be a worse job, but you could make more managing a Chick-fil-A or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But Jack, you're gonna hate that,
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Well, Jack, let's back up. Where did you start? How did you start? I mean, from your story on your website, it talks about how you purchased 5 guitars, I think it was, and just started working on them and making them golden, as best as players as they could be, and then just started turning into a money-making machine for you.
Yeah, more or less.
Tell me your story.
I mean, it goes back a little further than that, where I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, and there was just really nowhere in there to do the guitar work. The nearest guitar store was 45 minutes away, and I was 14, and I didn't have a car, and I didn't have money. But what I did have was the early, really slow running version of the internet. And so what I did was I learned, very primitively how to do my own restrings and setups, and how to solder and that the really basic stuff. And I started working on that through middle and high school. By high school, I was like fixing cables for my band director, and I was getting my friends' guitars and doing setups, but I was just restringing them and cleaning them up for them.
And in the meantime, you're a player, so you're working on your own guitars too, right?
Oh yeah. Well, that was really the main thing. Was I had a couple of guitars, and I had no way, if I didn't take care of them, nobody would. There was no shop like mine in my town.
Gotcha.
So there was no like kindly shop owner that would have restrung it for $20 for me.
Necessity was the mother of invention.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, this whole store thing has been, I have wanted to create the space that I so desperately wish I had when I was 13, 14, 15, like this whole thing is just, a gigantic monument to my teenage self, you know, in
Dude,
a
you can
way.
tell.
Yeah.
And you are, and I was trying to think of a way to describe Jack Brunson. You're a kid in a candy store, and you
Oh yeah.
made the candy store. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I was like, I was a kid. I'm a kid who got into a candy store and went, you know what? I like this so much. I'm gonna get into the candy store business, you know?
There you go. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't really care. I mean, this is gonna come. I don't know. Some people are probably gonna call my bluff on this, but I don't super care about money. I'm not a huge like money grubby guy. I pay myself
Sure.
$16 an hour, 40 hours a
Okay.
week, regardless of how
Sure.
much I work or how little I work. You know, it just helps me
Sure. Sure.
budget.
Sure.
But I mean, I'm more just I want to be the Willy Wonka of trash guitars. I don't know, you know, like
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
want to be the Willy Wonka of weirdo guitars. When people think of like kind of offbeat, weird, you know, weird colors and weird setups and all that, I want them to think of me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And I'm telling you, Jack, you know, and I was perusing your website, and you do have an archive of some far out fucking guitars, and one of them that blew my mind, obviously, is the Frankenshit
oh
made out
yeah,
of a
the
toilet, made out of a
Frankenshat.
toilet.
Yeah,
Yeah, and what I
yeah.
really like, oh, it's Shat. Okay, because
Yeah,
you got to
Like
ask
Frankenstrat, but it's the Frankenshat.
Frankenshat.
Uh,
That makes sense.
I also
Because you
call
had
it
the asterisk in there. You didn't have it spelled
the
out.
bedpan Halen, if you will,
Yes,
or
yeah. And
the
what blew my mind is
Stratocrapper.
the Stratocrapper. And
Yeah,
what I really liked about it is you said relic on that.
yeah, it is. It is relic. Well, I
There's
had to
like a
stand.
little edge that's like showing the wood underneath the toilet seat. That's
Well,
relic. Yeah,
it was a used toilet seat
dude,
because
that's nasty
I
as
was
fuck. Where did
replacing
you
my
get
toilet.
it?
I was
It's your
replacing my
personal
toilet seat.
toilet seat?
Yeah, it was out of my house. And so like I was replacing them and I was taking them out to the dump and it was over COVID. So I had way too much time on my hands, you know?
Yeah,
And so I
yeah.
was like, okay, well, I just had a stupid idea. And so like I went and I made two of them. But I
Two.
sanded and Lysol them so much because of
Okay,
the,
okay.
you know, sanitary concerns.
Sure,
So
sure.
sanded, Lysol, sanded, Lysol, sanded, Lysol.
Okay,
And by the time
okay.
I got done with that, it had little spots where I'd worn through it. And I
Oh,
thought rather
gotcha.
than painting them, just relicking them was funnier, you know?
Yeah, it is.
So
It is.
I relicked them to go with it.
So
Actually,
which one's on the website? Number one or number two?
number two actually is on the
Oh, perfect.
website.
Yeah. The
Number
number
one
two.
got
Yeah.
bought. Yeah. Actually, number one got bought by an employee at Gibson Custom Shop.
No shit. What do you know? Really?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my God.
he's a regular customer of mine. He's been with me a long time,
Cool.
but
Very cool.
he really likes weird shit. I mean, I guess literally in this sense,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
he's like really into Moderns and Corvuses and the like Gibson bastard children.
Uh-huh.
And so he
Uh-huh.
just came in and I cut him a great deal on the first one was the
Of
Stratocrapper.
course. Yeah.
Kind of like a Strat, you know. Weird thing is, I mean, they play pretty good and they held intonation better than I would have assumed for
Wow.
something I made
Wow.
out of just trash parts I had hanging around, you know. So,
Oh man.
but yeah,
It's awesome.
I started doing stuff for people in high school, and then I went to college. I went to MTSU, and I did a 4-year degree in music business. And then I got enough of the music business that I just didn't want to do anything with that. Like I didn't really want to
Okay.
work on Music Row. It all seemed so
Left a bad taste in your mouth.
yeah, I just
It's too
didn't.
corporate feeling.
Yeah, too corporate feeling. I just didn't care. I saw the work that I was gonna do, which was gonna be like working for small DIY labels and stuff like that. Like that was the stuff that most appealed to me, and I wouldn't be. It would have been the same situation, more or less. Like that pays more or less the same as this, and all of that. And
Okay. Okay.
more or less, I think I just decided somewhere in that 4 to 6 years that I was in college and right out of it that like music was a thing that I just enjoyed doing and playing music, that is, and I didn't want to
Very
turn that
cool.
into a job. Like I wanted to keep that separate, but like the guitar building and rebuilding and tinkering and that kind of thing, I've also it's always been kind of my like some people build model cars or airplanes. I put old guitars back together. It's always been my little hobby on the side, you know, since
Sure.
high school, maybe.
Okay.
And that I didn't mind turning into work, obviously.
Oh yeah. Why would you? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I joke that I started selling gear to fund my nasty musicianship habit. You know, and
it's a habit. You're in 4 freaking different bands, right?
3 right now. I have been in 4
3.
at various different
Okay.
times. I have a couple
Okay.
of projects that could sound the bat signal at, just any time, and then I have to
Nice.
go, record. There's probably about 2 projects that, like, if one of the members just decided, hey, let's do a quick couple run of shows, then I'd be, back at practice for that band too.
Very cool.
But
And
yeah.
I listened to some of your tracks, man, and really good stuff. I
Oh,
have to
thank
say.
you.
One of them was super heavy, and I was like, yeah, they're all very different sounding.
Yeah, so I don't really ever understand the people that they're in like 4 bands and they're all just like indie dream pop, and you can't really tell
What's
this
the point,
one. Yeah,
right?
what's the point? So yeah, I've got the heavy one is called Toxic Culture, and we're sort of
That's the one. Yeah.
hardcore thrash thing. I play bass in that band, and I tell people that, like, one, I love the energy of hardcore and punk shows. I've been going to punk shows since I was 14, and so like I love that energy. I don't really honestly listen to heavy music a ton. I do, but it's not really like for first and foremost on my playlist. But the reason that I've stayed playing in Toxic Culture is that I love the energy of the shows, and it is the band of all of my bands that has kept me a good musician, because that stuff is hard, like playing thrash, running stuff at 220 240 BPM and getting it tight and clean. Like, my other 2 bands, are pretty middle of the road as far as like technical ability, like pop rock bands. And I would have been fine if I'd have kept those 2 and only been in those 2. But I feel like the thing that's kept me like really talented and really caught up is Toxic Culture.
That makes sense, because I mean, and being I sent you the Hopscotch, the band I was in, and I'm a guitar player. And one day they said, hey, look, our bass player quit. And I said, shit, it's just 2 less strings and it's punk. You know what I mean? So how hard could it be? And sure enough, I walked away with a hell of a lot stronger left hand, and my guitar playing benefited so much.
See, I'm primarily a bass player.
Okay.
Like, if you were to put, gun to my head, see, the Guitarcheology and the, like, me being in bands, they happened like congruently, but they were parallel from each other in completely separate compartments of my life. And like, I definitely didn't design it in a way to where I'm running a store and being in 3 bands. I don't think I would have chosen that, but like, they all just sort of grew organically, separately. And I'm a yes man. I'm not one to shut something down. If things are going in a direction and that direction seems to be gaining momentum, let's just see where it goes, is always my kind of thought. And I think that's like the store I stand in every day is my gigantic, let's just see where it goes. And I keep every day, let's just seeing where it goes. And it goes. And you know what?
It kind of, it reminds me of the Island of Misfit Toys kind of. You've got such a cool lineup of guitars. How do you find these guitars? Do you go out on expeditions to pawn shops and antique stores and go online and surf Facebook Marketplace? Like, you just had that Telecaster lefty body that you said that customer got for like $25. Come to find out, it's a hell of a lot more valuable than what he thought he was getting.
Yeah, I mean, conservatively, a $1,000, even in the mutilated state that it's
well, there
in.
you go. There you go. Yeah. So where do you go, Jack, to find these misfit toys and bring them to Guitarcheology?
Well, used to, like, I would go out to flea markets and pawn shops and estate
and
sales.
Dude, isn't the deep South one of the best locations for that kind of stuff?
It really is. The only frustrating thing is that where I'm at, I'm 25 minutes from Nashville or so. And I've found that to have any kind of luck whatsoever, you have to get about an hour and a half from here.
Makes sense.
As far as going out. Once you get out into far East Tennessee, far West Tennessee, Northern Georgia, Northern Alabama, or Southern Kentucky, you start to find the deals and you start to find stuff at reasonable prices. But if
Cool.
it's 90 miles from the Nashville city limit, you're going to pay full price or more for the guitar, and you're just
because
not
they
gonna
know
find
what they have.
yeah, or they know what they have, or they're relying on the like tourist trap rules. You know, they're going to get more
Good
money
point.
out of it because they're greater Middle Tennessee, and we're the guitar, capital of the world. Probably there are
Right.
probably more guitars per capita in Davidson and the surrounding counties than anywhere else on the
Sure.
planet.
Absolutely.
But to answer
Well,
your
then I-
question, I mostly I used to do that kind of stuff, and now I just really don't have to. There's just now a spigot of the public that comes through the front door, and I mean, just like that telly body, I didn't buy it on Facebook Marketplace. One of my customers did and brought it in, and so I honestly, I miss it a little. I kind of really enjoyed the getting out there and I love antique
finding those little
shopping.
gold nuggets. Those gold
Yeah,
nuggets.
and my wife and I, we collect a couple of other different kinds of antiques. Like we like the glowing uranium glass, the vintage irradiated glass.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
And we collect a few other, just kind of oddity antiques, weird stuff, taxidermy, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
So I like going out because we can do a little bit of personal looking and a little bit of guitar looking. I kind of miss that. We'll do it sometimes, but now we do it at a much more, we're not out there hustling to find stuff. We're out there just kind of like leisurely putting along, if we find something great, if we don't, whatever.
You know what it reminds me of, Jack? It reminds me of, Joe Bonamassa, the dude snatching up all the really good guitars that are out there, right? Yeah. He and the like that have the big fat wallets, and the guys that collect a guitar, put them in a storage locker and probably never ever touch them. They have dudes that are out there constantly looking. They're like, "Hey, Joe, guess what I ran into?" Da 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 da. Have you had people ask you to do that? Like, hey, if something comes across your bench, could you let me know because I'm interested?
Yeah, I have about a half dozen to a dozen such guys now. A lot of them are. One of them that comes to mind runs a storage unit place out in like Sparta or Liberty or one of those outer county places. Okay. There's another couple of couples that I can think of that do storage unit auctions, and they just happen to come across gear amongst other stuff all the time, and I'm now their constant contact for that. And then I got a few guys that are just they're who I was, 6 or 8 years ago. They're just guys doing it out of a spare bedroom. They buy and flip, and it started because they love gear and they wanted to fund their gear habit, and so a couple of them bring me stuff to consign. A couple of them, buy stuff so cheap that they bulk it up and sell it to me at a price that I can make money on it. I have different. The way that I tell people is that it would probably be easier for me to think of every way of which someone could procure a guitar that I have not procured a guitar. I have procured a guitar in just about every way imaginable. I found them in a dumpster. I've had them given to me for free because your cousin's friend's aunt was moving out and it was just there. I've had them donated so that I could give them to the next kid with a sad story that needed a guitar to play. They've come to me in every form or fashion imaginable at this point.
Jack, what is your holy grail guitar? Is there one that it's like every time you go out, it's like, God, I wish I could run into that, yada yada guitar.
I have a few, but
and that they're hard to find. That it's a rarity.
The piece de la resistance, the one that I really wish I could find out in the wild or find a good price on, because they're pretty obscenely expensive now if you buy them on Reverb or anything like that, but would be a mid-60s Tasco Spectrum 5, specifically the blue one with the offset body and the 5 rainbow switches.
Wow.
That one has been on my bucket list for a long time. I've had just about every Tasco or Tasco Matsumoto, anything anyone could ever imagine. I've had one pass through my store. That's the kind of stuff I love. I love Tascos. I love anything that you would call a dime store guitar, stuff that was
Sure.
sold in Sears catalogs,
Yeah.
any of that kind of stuff.
My first guitar is a Sears catalog guitar.
What was it?
It was 1981, and it was this Les Paul.
Oh yeah, that
And
was a Court made Les
yeah,
Paul. I
yeah,
literally
yeah.
just donated that exact Les Paul to this. There's a lady who has a form of cancer, and they're having a big fest, and I had one of those. I just donated it to her.
Oh man, what I wouldn't give, because it had a bolt-on neck.
Yep.
And one of the things that I really loved about and a first fret inlay, which Les Pauls don't have, and one of the things I really liked about it was being able to, grab the neck and the body and. But I think I traded it for a bag of weed in high school. So.
Many guitars have been traded for a bag of weed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
those were made by CMI in Korea. They started producing them in Japan with Matsumoto, and then they moved the contract when they started moving up the contracts. By 81, I would imagine that one would have been made by Court in Korea. But
Gotcha. And in the Sears catalog, I had the page of the catalog, the Sears catalog I bought it out of. I found this online.
Oh, that's so cool.
And it is cool. And I actually printed it out. It's this guy right in the middle here, right in the middle.
So that
for $119.
That guitar right there to the far right, that was one of the first ones I bought in high school and fixed up. I bought that guitar. Yeah, I bought it for $40 and fixed it up and sold it to a buddy for like, I don't know, $80 or something.
Dude, the electronics are mad on that thing. There's so many. It makes Brian May's guitar look tame.
Yeah, mine was the kind of stripped back version that only had it didn't have the built-in electronics or anything, but it was that guitar and it had the big, wacky, huge control cover.
That's insane.
I realized,
and then of course, a little 25-watt amp too. Sears amplifier.
I realized earlier I let ADHD get the best of me, which I normally do, and forgot to cycle back around to my other two bands. One of which,
yeah.
It's True, we're like a pop punk band, Green Day, Blink-182 kind of stuff, but we just put out a new album called I Can See My House From Here, and I'm really proud of it. Like, if you're a fan of Good Charlotte, Green Day, Blink-182, Simple Plan, that kind of stuff, I think you'd really like it. And then I play bass in that band as well. And when I'm in, it's actually pretty funny because when I'm in Toxic Culture and when I'm in Big If True, I'm doing this splitter rig where it allows me to be the bass player and the second guitarist. So what I do is I split my signal and then I run one chain out to my normal bass amp, and then I run another chain to a Digitech bass whammy that's going up the fifth and the octave, and then do a distortion pedal and out to a guitar amp. So more specifically, it sounds like a baritone guitar chunking power chords over whatever I'm playing. But like Big If True's a 3-piece, so it really fills us out. Like, it makes us sound like a 4-piece. And then Toxic Culture, because we're a heavy band, it really like fills out the like can feel it in my bones,
Interesting.
sound of it.
Super cool. I think there were one band that I thought of when you mentioned that, like Local H, or kind of reminds me of that kind of thing.
The inspiration I took is from I think they're a British band, but they're called Royal Blood.
Yes. I love them.
They're great. Yeah. They're just a bass and drum duo. I don't like their later couple of albums. Their first album or two is really good. But he does the same thing where he's like the guitar player and the bass player.
Yeah.
He's also kind of a real prick about talking about his gear. Like that, when I was trying to figure out how he does it, I was reading some interviews, and he just like straight up walked out of an interview when someone asked him, and he like spray paints his pedals black so you can't tell what he's doing. But what I've got going now is I'm pretty sure, pedal here or pedal there, pretty close to what he did, and is a very similar sound. And then the one band that I play guitar in is Casual Sex, spelled SECTS, like the sex of a church.
Yes.
And we're kind of like a Pixies, Nirvana, 90s revival, grunge pop sort of thing.
Awesome.
And that is the only band I play guitar in, because I think if I'm just gonna like walk into a band and be a hired gun, I'm gonna want to play the bass. The only band I'm interested in playing the guitar in is like a passion project like that, like I
Sure.
wrote the songs, I'm gonna get up there with a guitar and scream at you,
Right. Right.
and then walk off. I just I don't know. I like playing the bass. I'm a big like it's the instrument. I tell people the way that I put it is if I was putting a Devil Went Down to Georgia style situation, then I would likely choose the bass to battle the devil.
It's funny. It reminds me of a cartoon I saw once. It's Robert Johnson's down at the crossroads, and the devil comes up and he's like, "All right, it's going to cost you your soul." And he's like, "Sure, I'll sign on the line." And he signs on the line, and the devil goes, "Okay, here you go." And he hands him a bass guitar, and Robert Johnson's like, "Fuck!" Oh man.
But yeah, I guess let's see where we got to the end the story of I graduated MTSU, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then I went to work for Mario Martin for 7 years.
Wow.
We did Mario Guitars, Guitar Mill. We did high-end parts, Fender style parts, and then we did high-end F-style vintage recreation guitars, $3,000-$4,000 guitars. And about
Is that out
halfway
of
huh?
in Nashville?
They're Murfreesboro, yeah. It's about 30 miles south of Nashville.
Okay.
Yeah. It was the same town that I went to college in. I lived there until, recently, and then we moved to Lebanon, and I didn't have any plans of starting a store here when I moved here, but I just kind of happened to catch the town at a good time. It was rebuilding after a flood, and I got into my building pretty good, but it was about halfway through my time at Mario's that, as we mentioned earlier, the cool job tax in this industry. You're going to have a cool job, but you're probably not going to get paid as well.
Sure.
And I loved working for Mario and them. And I love the product they make. I still think they make about the best, Fender style vintage recreation, nitro to the hilt guitar that you can buy. But
do you have any of his guitars in your shop?
Yeah, I have one bass now, but personally I have three.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
I have 3 of his, and I love each and every one of them. I've had 6 or 7 of them, but when I buy a new one that replaces what the other one does, it gets a little indulgent to have too many $3,000 guitars just hanging out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
that's Jack. That's one thing that I appreciate about your business too, is you are really tapped into the local makers, foot pedals, guitars. Can you give me some names that you stock in your store?
So this is actually a very deliberate strategy that I'm working on right now. I because I'm a people person kind of guy, like I told you, I have a lot of friends in this industry, and a lot of them are making really, really cool stuff, and they don't have the pull of some of these bigger companies, Electro Harmonics or Fender or, any of those companies. So I'm working sort of a deliberate marketing strategy where we become known as the small local builders, local tossing a US net, to me, if you're a one-man operation building out of a small town in Nebraska, you're still a local builder, right?
Sure,
like you're not
absolutely
local to us, but my plan is to get as many of these people who are making great stuff together under one roof and sort of use the collective marketing power of all of them to market all of them,
Awesome.
And so it's sort of a deliberate strategy we've been working on, and we've had some really great success so far. The biggest success I think we've had would be Hagtronics. You should really get Paul on here. I mean, he's a kind of a shy guy, but he'd be an interesting, he's a wizard, he makes incredible pedals. And we have been selling the literal crap out of specifically the Rotten Sorcerer and the Cerebral Spectre and the Clag. His pedals.
What do those pedals do? Because I logged in your Instagram. You had a post with them from Hagtronics, and and I wanted a description of what the pedals actually do.
Yeah. So
what was the number one seller? Was which one?
The Rotten Sorcerer, probably.
And what does that do?
It's a super powered like muff style fuzz with a lot of different clipping and voicing options. It's super cool. Also, it glows in the dark. That's a real selling point for people. It's got a
Awesome.
wizard
Yeah.
on the front, and the wizard glows in the dark. A lot of people like that.
Nice.
The
Nice.
Clag is his overcharged, Pawn style Silver Centaur
Okay.
overdrive. It is the best, Klon style overdrive I've heard personally. I have one on my board. I had him build me one into Toxic Culture's signature pedal. It's his boost and the Clag.
Oh, cool. Cool.
And then the Cerebral Spectre is it's kind of a delay, it's kind of a reverb. He was working on this was a discovered lightning by accident kind of thing. He was working on a new version of his spring reverb, and he accidentally over dialed one of the chips or something. And when he got it in there, it sort of acted like a reverb, and it sort of acted like a delay. And then he kind of sent him off on a tangent of creating something new.
Cool.
So it's got a really interesting, echo, reverb, delay, modulation, and it's got some interesting stuff you can do with the expression out, because you can shift the time in real time.
A lot of those boutique pedal guys, some of their best pedals were made by complete accident. I love that.
Oh yeah, they were trying to copy this, that, or the other pedal, and they messed one up, or they overclocked.
Suddenly, cha-ching, there's a whole new line of, and then everyone's copying that mistake.
Or the other one I see is I put this part here because it was the only part I had that would work, but it sounds awesome. Like, this is an unorthodox way to do it, but because I put this transistor that wouldn't normally go here, this pedal sounds crazy, or whatever.
And those are the pedals that are perfect for Jack's Guitarcheology.
Oh yeah, those are the stuff. That's the stuff I look for. Just
the misfit guitars, the misfit pedals.
I wouldn't love to have a bunch of brands that are just making like exact Tube Screamer copies.
Right,
like it wouldn't. I like stuff I like stuff with a twist. Like
sure,
like the Rotten Sorcerer is a muff, but it's a little bit of a green muff, and it's a little bit of a black muff, and it's got some voicing options, and a lot of stuff you can mess with it. So it makes it a really versatile pedal.
Cool. Very cool.
Another company pedal wise that I would mention is we just took on Monkey Riot. They make really cool stuff. We do Idiot Box out of Texas. He's a one-man operation. His stuff is really affordable, so it sells like hotcakes. I don't know. I honestly don't know how his business makes money. It's a one-man operation. He hand prints all his own enclosures, hand wires everything in Texas.
Wow.
And most of his pedals are like 129, competitive.
Does he number them? Does he number them like 1
I
of
think
1,000?
So. Yeah,
wow, nice.
He's up in the high numbers too, because he's got a few dealers all over the country. But we've had great success with his because they have fun, pop culture, Mars Attacks, and one's got Ron Swanson on it, and it's cool, fun stuff. We've got another.
I saw the Ron Swanson. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how he hasn't gotten sued for that one.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, exactly.
And then we've got Yellow Cake pedals out of Alabama. Ryan is actually a friend of mine who runs Yellow Cake. I met him way back when I was working at Mario's at a trade show. I think it was at the Preston show. But I just was enamored with him from the beginning. One, he's a sweet guy. But two, there are a few people that I know in this industry that make me feel like a hack and a fraud. When I talk to him, I'm like, dude, you are just so smart. And Ryan at Yellow Cake is one of those guys. Like, he understands wiring to a degree that just melts my brain. And every time we do an order or whatever, we'll do an hour and a half where we'll talk on the phone and just catch up. And he'll be telling me about what all he's working on and all the new stuff. And I'll be like, I got to be honest, Ryan, I knew what about 40% of those words mean, I would say,
that's awesome.
That's probably an honorable mention list. The people who I think are so smart that make me feel like a hack and a fraud. Another one would be Scott from Stringjoy, Scott Marquardt at Stringjoy. Man, anytime I talk to that guy, I could listen to him talk about pounds per square inch for hours, man. He is just so fascinating with when you're setting up guitars with this, you should use this. And he just has, I've taken a lot of his stuff to heart just because he's taught me more about string tension. And then the ultimate one to me here locally, who's actually a really good friend of mine, and if you haven't had him on the show, you really should, is Dave Johnson at Scale Model Guitars. I love
Okay.
Dave to death. We carry his guitars in the store. But every time I talk to Dave, I learn 7 new things and I leave
Wow.
feeling like an absolute fraud, you know, like, because that dude knows guitars, man. He knows, and I mean in a like luthier sense, he knows them inside and out. And I've told him a couple of times, like, man, the fact that I even get to sit at the same table as you is a gigantic compliment to me.
Cool. Is
But
he
yeah,
acoustic or electrics? What
he
does he
makes mostly
specialize in?
electrics. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, we're carrying his stuff. Obviously, we carry String Joy, local string company.
I was
They're
just going to ask.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were my only string brand when we started. We've expanded into carrying Diodario and Ernie Ball, but mostly because people are loyal to their string brands like they're loyal to their cigarette brands. It's just hard
Yep.
to get a Marlboro guy to switch to Camels. It's just
Yes.
it's just the
Well,
nature of it.
that's a good point, Jack, because I would switch to Stringjoy as a player, but they don't have a flat wound string that matches because I'm a jazz guy, first and
We
foremost.
we've been over it and over it, and it's
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. They've told me it's
I figured
coming.
it would be. They're
Yeah,
diving into bigger and bigger. They're getting huge exponentially.
they said it's
No,
coming. They said
okay.
I asked Scott about this once, and Chris, their lead sales, they're like global sales guy. And they told me that actually the process for winding flat wound strings is one, more time consuming and tedious, and 2,
Mhm.
exponentially more dangerous, because when you do the final wrap, you're basically wrapping razor tape. So
Right.
if you
Right.
slip or not wearing the proper PPE, you can do some slicey damage real fast.
Sure. Sure.
But he said they are coming. They're working on that, as well as a
Oh,
couple
that's
of
cool. That's good to
coded
know. That's
options. They
all.
just launched into coded stuff last year, and I was
Yeah.
not a coded strings guy before their coded came along. Um,
Really? Okay.
yeah,
And
their coded
you're a
strings are great.
convert.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, they coat the material and then wind the string. And the problem I always had with
Ah,
coated strings is they always felt a little too slippy and gummy wormy, you know.
sure.
And I
Sure.
like
Sure.
the string joys. They feel really good. They sound really good. They last a long time. Um, I'm trying to
That's
think.
good to know. That's
I
good to
think that's
know.
all the pedal builders. Of course, I try to convert anyone to string joy. They just make a markedly better string than anyone else. And if you I mean, for the extra couple of bucks, it's just worth it, you know, especially here in
Absolutely.
Nashville. I get people on them because I'm like, they're made 25 minutes from here. And if you send them a message, you'll probably talk to the CEO or the global head of sales, you know?
Hey, do you know Rhett from Rhett's Frets? I'm sure you
Yeah,
do. He's
absolutely
Rhett's.
do. Actually,
Yeah.
I met him through Dave, who I mentioned a little bit ago.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Dave and I put together a list of all the local techs here in the Nashville area that I host on my website, and Rhett's on it. Elliot Pride, who I can't remember if you've had on, but think you know of.
Not yet.
You should look up Elliot. He does cool work too.
I
But there's
will.
a few other people. We're building the Nashville guitar community is sort of refreshingly cooperative. There's a lot of places, like I had my Diodario rep came in the other day, and he said, yeah, I was just at Eastside Music Supply in East Nashville. Guys over there said to say hi. They said you love your shop. And I was like, oh yeah, those guys are awesome. I love those guys. Yeah, you know, who are you going to next? And they're like, oh, we're going to Fanny's next. And I was like, oh, I love their shop, man. You should tell them I said, hey, you know. So we just have he said, you know, this town is just so unlike everywhere else I go. Like, I can't mention if I go to Bob's Music that I was at Al's Music across town, because Bob's going to
Right.
tell me what a son of a bitch Al is.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
like all of that. And that's just not the way it is here. You know, like Zan and Eastside and I have a mutual friend that we're both in a band with. Like, he's in Toxic Culture with me, and then he's in a band called Moru with Zan. Like we're all, a lot of them I knew before I owned the store and that kind of thing. So this
Very tight
team is really
family.
cool. Rhett came and had lunch with us a week or two ago because he was talking to me and he's like, man, I like being a solo tech, but sometimes I miss the like workplace camaraderie. And I was
Sure.
like, man, you're like 20 minutes away. You ever want to come
Yeah.
just get burritos with us and eat lunch? We have
Okay.
at the shop, we have like, family lunch pretty much every day. It inevitably gets interrupted by 15 different customers because we'll be dead all day, and then the minute we sit down with food, that's when everyone will show up.
But I mentioned Rhett because he recently posted on Insta that he took a tour of the String Joy factory. Have you had a chance to do that yet?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I did that years ago. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
I met Scott. I mean, I haven't seen it in years, but I met Scott when I was still working at Mario's, and he was probably only like a year. I was probably one of String Joy's earlier customers. Because he was only maybe a year or two into doing it.
Wow.
And I met him it was, I think, either 2016 or 2017 NAMM. And he had a backpack full of strings that he was just carrying around, like, here, try my strings. And so he gave me like a set of bass strings and a set of electrics. And I tried them, and I've been using them ever since because I just really liked them. And I liked Scott. And I thought that, what a chore, what a insurmountable task to take on to found guitar string. Where do you even, I asked, I was like, where do you even start? He was like, by buying the winders. And I was like, yeah, I guess buying the winding machines makes sense.
Sure.
But like, it's just such a crazy place to get into.
That would be a tough market to crack for sure. I mean,
but he's done it, man. He has done it.
Yeah, he sure has.
But yeah, I have been using them pretty much ever since the beginning, and I got Mario using them while I was there. And so when I moved out and did my own store, it just made sense. I think I had a String Joy dealership for Jack's Guitarcheology when I was still at Mario's because I was buying them in bulk to put on the guitars that I was selling on my Reverb store.
Oh, sure.
But yeah, I was trying to think, I don't want to leave out any other brands, but we've got a couple of great local guitar builders as well.
They're all on your website.
They are, yeah. Dismal Axe is one I talk about. Gwen, she is our mountain lady. It's crazy. She hand carves everything. She winds her own pickup. Cool. She cuts her own hardware out with a jeweler's saw. She's just insanely talented craftswoman. She just brought me, we sold the first one she brought me. She just brought me a new one called the Sparrow Hawk that if you're like, quasi steampunk, quasi like retro future kind of stuff, it is just really, really cool.
Interesting.
And of course, the guitars play great and sound great. The pickups sound truly unique because she's winding them herself. So, the ones that are in the Sparrow Hawk, they kind of sound like Filtertrons. They kind of sound like P90s. It's a very unique, sort of melding of those two sounds.
Interesting.
And then we've got Eckwitz guitars, Kevin Eckwitz out of Spring Hill. I really like his stuff. He's doing a sort of vintage Epiphone with modern appointments. He's really married the like vintage styling and the modern stuff together. We have the very first Eckwitz baritone, which I'm super excited about. It is a 26.5-inch scale baritone. So it plays a little more like a guitar since it's only an inch longer than a Stratorattelli. And then Mario guitars, of course, we carry.
Sure.
I've got a couple of used ones and one bass that's brand new. I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting any. I think that's we just took
they are all on your website.
They are, yeah.
And if anyone wonders, you represent on your website for sure.
Ghost Planet Guitars, which is Wes Redmond. He teaches at MI. He's a very talented Nashville area luthier. But we just got two from him. And I'm in talks with K Butler Guitars. They're going to get some in ours soon. I'm in talks with Lockhorn Guitars out of Chicago. They are making unbelievably cool stuff. And then
hey, I've got a company for you, and I have, he's in one of my episodes. He's out of St. Louis, Big River Guitars.
Oh yeah, I follow them on Instagram already.
Yes, yeah, check out his episode. He has a really cool building process and his designs are just bloody unique and beautiful. really.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Hey, Jack, I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go off. You were getting off on my Dan Electro
Yep.
bass,
Love it.
and yeah, and I went and looked it up, and it's a Silvertone Harmony 1444. But
Yep.
here's the problem: the
Uh-huh.
the guitarist from Hopscotch acquired it at a guitar shop that he was. This is from Anchorage, Alaska.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's where we were based, and he modified the hell out of it so that it's almost not even its original condition. There's a pick guard that went right here with these two screws that you see.
Hmm.
This is not the original bridge.
No, it is not.
Yeah, and it's got like the barrel, the Telecaster barrel
Yeah, that's
saddles.
like a P bass bridge or something, jazz bass maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and not original tuners. The original tuners was a bar across
Yeah.
the back with really crappy little. I think these are. Anyway, I'm trying to find out. Could you procure parts? Would you have your eye? Because if I could find the original bridge and I could find an original pickguard, and I went to Reverb, and maybe eBay might be another, I could get this thing as close to. Unfortunately, the Silvertone logo went across here. I could probably
Yeah.
get a decal that could fill that in.
I get
You know.
the little dealer badges every once in a while. Honestly,
Okay.
for the money, I just skip getting the bridge and either get a better P bass style bridge or something, because those original bridges are notoriously pretty crappy.
They are.
Yeah,
I did a guy's bass the other day, and he had a hip shot, and I really liked that bridge. I
I
mean,
love
talk about
I think they call it the kick ass, the hip shot kick ass.
yes, the
Yeah, that
multiple sliding it back
it's their
side to
Leo
side.
Kwan, style bridge.
Yeah,
But yeah, that I put that one on a lot of my guitars.
absolutely.
That would probably be one to look for to put on it. But yeah, I'd
Sure.
probably just pass on putting an original bridge. The pick guard I might be able to help you with. I actually am the Dan Electro dealer at the store, so I might be able to see if I could get you like a repro one. That
Oh,
way.
dude, I'm in. I'm in.
Because
Yeah,
they make
just let
that
me.
bass now. I have one at the store, like the reissue
The
of it.
U2.
Yeah, the U2. It's a U2, not a U1, but yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the tuners, of course. Yeah, this thing's been through hell and back. I mean, it literally got to the point where it's such a POS, and I hate saying that because it's going completely against the grain with the Island of Misfit toys that we've talked about.
Yeah.
But it really is a POS.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think my ethos is loving guitars
like
the shittiness.
say again.
My ethos is loving guitars for their shittiness, burrs and all.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I should look up. I found the Harmony 1444 online because I knew this headstock wasn't a Dan Electro headstock. That was the one big difference.
They call that the dolphin headstock.
Yeah, because of the porpoisey looking nose, but it's also got a metal nut. And I'm not sure, was that standard back then for these to have that metal nut? Okay,
it was.
Yeah,
yeah.
it gets
same thing on the tuners. Honestly, I would just leave they probably work better than the originals. Honestly, also the originals, if I recall correctly, were geared backwards, so they loosened when you think you should tighten them, and they tighten when you think you should loosen them.
Why would they do that?
I don't know. There was no standard, no standardization back then. So
interesting. And they're they're really small and diminutive looking. They look weak, really, the original tuners.
Yeah. But I would put a better bridge on it, keep the tuners, and maybe try to find the pick guard. I'm really bad at I don't really care that much about vintage sanctity, to me, a guitar's instrument, the journey is just as much a part of the manufacturing process as where it was manufactured. Does that make any sense? That's the way that I view it. So if a guitar was manufactured in 1967, and the 6 months it was in the factory between when it was started and when it was put out for sale, that's part of the manufacturing process. But everything that happens to it in the 50 years, 60 years after is also
Mm-hmm.
part of the manufacturing process.
Mm-hmm.
So it leads me
Mm-hmm.
to believe things like, if you've got a 1970s Gibson and it's been refretted, that's a plus. That's not a minus. That shouldn't pull from the value. That's making the instrument more playable. Or
True.
if you've got a guitar that was made in 1965 and it was stripped and refinished at least somewhat decently in 1975, that
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't really detract from the value either.
It's
You know,
part of its story. It's
it's
the
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 story
lineage of that
now.
instrument. Yeah,
I had
and
a I had a
that's what makes each one unique unto itself.
I had a Burns like Baldwin a new Sonic it was about a year ago, and I took it to the Amigo show here in Nashville thinking that I'd move it. It was from the early 60s and it had been refinished in like a mocha brown, so I'm going to assume it was refinished in the 70s, right? So the
Okay.
refinish
All
on
right.
the guitar was at least 50 years old on a guitar that was 65 years old. So it's been that color more than it has been the original color it was.
Sure.
But everyone I showed it to at the show, you know, turned their nose up at it. Well, it's a refinish. Oh, it's a refinish. I'm like,
Mm,
it's
mm,
still an awesome guitar. Or like another story from the
snobs.
Amigo show. I have this guitar. It's a Gibson factory guitar, which means it was made by a Gibson employee in the 80s and 90s, either off the clock or at home or whatever. You know, it was a side project, a passion project of some Gibson employees. It's an SG style guitar that's got these really elaborate inlaid eagle and flowers and all this. Is beautiful. It's gorgeous. I bought it from the guy who built its nephew. And so, you know, I know that this one builder, he built it, all of that. And I finished it. It came to me built with pretty cheap parts. So I put, you know, Gibson Custom Shop custom buckers and really nice parts on it. And I took it to that Amigo show and I was trying to get, I think, about $1,800 out of it at the show. I was trying to do a show special price. It was a pretty good price on it because it's American made, really nice SG style, neck through too. That was pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
But everyone I showed it to, well, they were like, "Oh, you can't prove that." And I was like, "Dude, if I could prove that this was a Gibson factory, like historical Gibson guitar, I'd be charging $8,000 for it." You know, like that's why it's not $8,000. Is yeah, I know I can't prove that. It's just kind of
Right.
cool to think about, you know. And they're like,
Sure.
"Well, it's not really anything. Like it doesn't have anything collectors wise." I'm like, "Have you played this thing, man? This thing is sweet." Like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know, like I've come to realize in my ethos that there's a lot of people who view guitars as like Rolexes or BMWs
Mm-hmm.
or Harley
Mm-hmm.
Davidsons, or, you know, it's like a status
Mm-hmm.
symbol thing. They like guitars in theory, they like the collectability. And I'm very much these are tools, you know, they're tools and they're neat and they're so mysterious to me, even this far into it, you know, even this
Mm-hmm.
far into
Mm-hmm.
it. I am constantly surprised by guitars because I've had guitars that cost $7,000 that you just can't really put your finger on it, but it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not
Mm-hmm.
good. It's a
Mm-hmm. It's a
$7,500
looker.
paperweight. It just doesn't,
Yes.
you know, it just doesn't
A
have any
case
soul
queen.
at all, you know. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
on the inverse of that, sometimes you get an $80 guitar and you're playing it and you're like, holy shit.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what is
The
up with this
butter.
thing? You know, like
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
yoink these pickups and this crappy hardware. This guitar deserves better, you know, like so
Well,
like
then, Jack,
I'm a
that
very
begs the
grading on
question.
the
Go
real
ahead.
world thing.
No, I get it. And then that begs the question, what's your view on relicking guitars and then selling them from the custom shop relic and all that when
My my
they're career that really hasn't even happened?
my viewpoint on that changed a lot
Uh-huh.
from my
Uh-huh.
experience working at Mario's.
Okay.
I think if you'd have talked to me when I was much younger, before I worked at Mario's, I would
Uh-huh.
have had a lot of the same like stolen valor or non-earned glory, you know, kind of
Yeah.
arguments that you see about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And after working at Mario's, I'm just, without putting forth too much of an opinion on it, I kind of let me say this. I'll say this about it, right? It was the number one thing when I was working at Mario's that people loved to complain about. You know, they loved to say, no one's going to order that, or it looks like you drug it behind a truck, or, you know,
Uh-huh.
whatever
Uh-huh.
like that. But that didn't stop it from making 75 to 80% of our part sales. You know,
Right.
pretty
Right.
much everything had at least a light relic on it. And
Uh-huh.
I found the best way to use a relic, as if you're thinking of it as like a tool in a guitar builder's, kit, the best way to
Okay.
use a relic is to put it on a guitar that someone would otherwise be a little nervous about putting the first ding in. It's kind of like how you would sell jeans sort of pre-acid washed or pre-stone washed, so that
Yeah.
they're just a little broken in and stretchy and not brand new. Because
Sure.
everyone, if you're going to buy a $3,000 Mario Martin or Danacaster or any of these other small builders that are making great, Fender style or whatever, boutique guitars, you pay $3,000 to $5,000 on it for a guitar, and it's all, showroom polish. You can see it from space, pretty. You're going to be
Yeah.
terrified of it. You're not going to want
Yeah.
to play it. You're going to
Right.
put gloves on every time you handle it, put it
That's right.
back up on the
Yeah.
wall with care. But if it comes to
Sure.
you with not even like a really severe relic, just like what we'd call a closet clean or a light relic, where it's got
Yeah.
one or two little nicks in it, maybe some checks in the nitro,
Uh-huh.
then you're like, okay, this is my guitar now. I can beat the crap out of it,
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
feel like that
Exactly.
relics have their place,
Right.
and it matters quite a bit how good the relic is and how good the person doing the relic is. I do relics. Generally, I do relics for other more practical reasons, like this guitar has a really large and unsightly chunk missing out of it. It's really not going to make sense unless we beat it up more. I call it
Okay.
it's like the awkward hair phase of damage. Like some guitars
Yeah.
come in and they don't have quite enough damage to be like worn, relicked, or patinaed,
Sure.
and
Sure.
they're too damaged to be sold as like, this is a just slightly used guitar,
Uh-huh.
so
Uh-huh.
the thing to do is to, seal the finish and kind of beat it up and relic it. But
Well,
that's
that makes
generally,
sense.
I use relics in that kind of way, to salvage a guitar that otherwise had a slide aside story. There's this local business owner who owns a jujitsu place. Back in the 90s, 2000s, he loaned his 1992 American Strat to a buddy, and that's when, relicking just took off. So his
Uh-huh.
buddy did him the favor of relicking the guitar for him. And he said it pissed him off so bad that he couldn't stand to look at the fucking thing. So he brought it to me, years later. He said, listen, I can't even look at this thing. I'm so mad about him just, and it was unsightly.
Yeesh.
It looked like it
Yeesh.
had like a rare skin condition or something,
Ah.
some bad big chunks. And so I just left it by my bench, and for 2 or 3 weeks, like I'd be like, chunk, 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 just like,
Yeah. Okay. Uh-huh.
and after a while, I got it to where like the relic was way heavier than I would have ever taken anything on my own
Okay.
board. But I got it to look like it was just like a Rory Gallagher style,
Cool.
really beat, Stevie Ray Vaughan
Yeah.
one, like super beat,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's old, people bought it at, way more than I paid for it. It took me a while to get the relic down, and I've come up with some ways to relicking poly is really hard. Relicking nitro is actually kind of easy. Nitro is really
Okay.
soft and delicate, and you can fuck up nitro if you look at it wrong or breathe on it wrong, or
Yeah. Right. Right.
but poly is, it's hard plastic when it's done. There's no getting that. So I've found a few techniques over the years to sort of fake nitro looking relics on poly. It really
Interesting.
beats the shit out of my hands to do it, but
Yeesh.
sometimes, I get guitars that just, they have such a large and unsightly chunk that I know is going to prevent it from selling unless we turn it into the whole package, the whole relic package. And
Yeah.
here's my relicking tip to everyone who likes to work on
Okay.
guitars. If you want the my relicking secret, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go down to a head shop, tobacco shop, the shadiest gas station in town, something like that. You're going to want to find the cheapest, crappiest crack lighter you could possibly find, and buy a few of those. And the way that I do a lot of my relicking stuff is I take one of those really cheap, crappy crack lighters, and you take it and you kind of rip all the safety stuff out of it, right? Get it on full blast, like big flame. And then have you ever heard of like candling, like prehistoric, like archaeology candling, like in caves, like old, like prehistoric humans would take their, their
Yes, like
candle
their
or their
hand.
flame, and they
Yeah,
would like, put the thing on the ceiling, and they would,
yeah,
write stuff or do paintings that way. That's
yeah.
basically what I do, but just with a gas station crack lighter. I take it, I come a good bit off the guitar body. It really helps if you like scuff up the poly with some steel wool or something,
Sure.
and
Okay.
then beat it up with whatever you use to beat up your guitar, get all your little dings and dents in it. And then you
Sure,
take
sure.
and you can't do this on nitro. If you do this on nitro, the guitar will bust into flames. Do not do this on nitro. I should go off on a tangent to say
That's
poly
right.
not flammable, nitro very flammable. Anyway, but you take it and you sort of candle it from a good distance, and you're not wanting to get it hot, but you're just sort of wanting to collect the soot of the
Gotcha.
candling. And then you
Okay.
sort of take one little piece of shop towel or something, and you spray up just a little bit of like oil, like lemon oil or something, and you rub that into that soot, and then you do it again and you rub it
Oh,
into the soot.
sure.
Keep using the same rag, and you'll eventually get this sort of like black paste that builds up, that's oil and soot, mixed together, and that rubs into wood and like cracks and dings and finish and makes them look old and doesn't make them look like you just dung right then.
Sure, sure, sure. Oh, that's a good technique. I like it.
But yeah, that's been my real secret to poly relics. I mean, you can fake checking with a razor blade if you're really careful and patient. I usually don't. I usually just kind of ding them up, and I think good relicing comes down to how good of a visual storyteller you are.
Right.
Why is that ding there? Why are these scrapes here?
Yes.
Did the
And
person
you're a guitar player, you're a collector, you've seen it before. Just mimic what you've seen on your own guitars.
like, did this guy wear a watch or a bracelet? So there's some
There you
scrapes
go.
on the forearm contour. Or
Did he
my
stick his
favorite,
cigarettes in the head
that was
to burn
that's
them?
my favorite
Yeah.
one. I put a
Yeah.
cigarette burn on nearly every relic I do. It was a thing. It was a thing my dad did. When my dad would play and he'd have a cigarette, he'd
Sure.
put it there, and a bunch of
There
his
you go.
guitars have little singe marks, right there.
You
And
know
so
what I ended up doing? I'm a Strat guy, and I have an '86 Japanese Strat. I just love that guitar to death. And I used to stick my guitar picks in the pick guard at the top of the pick guard to hold them.
Mhm.
So now my pick
You got a little
guard on all my on
yeah.
all my Strats, I have two Strats, and they all have that little dimple now.
You see that? I see that a lot.
That's a Patrick relic. But then
Yeah.
this '86 Strat, the pickups yellowed over time. The plastic yellowed, like they do. And then I have this client. He's like, "Hey, Patrick, check out." He collects guitars. I've never heard him play, but he loves buying them, and he brings them to me to get them set up. He's like, "You don't have to set this one up. I got it plecked." And right away, I'm like,
Oh yeah.
And then he opens up the custom shop case from Fender, and it's this relic, beautiful Strat. And the pickups are yellowed, and the pick guard is tinted green, the aged green. And I was like, dude, it took me decades to get mine to look like that. And you just spent $5,000 on, it's already done.
Yeah.
But I think it's a case queen. I don't think he's going to be playing that guitar. I think it's a case queen. So.
People might come at me for this, but do you know why the pickup covers yellowed and the pick guard did not?
No, tell me why.
Different materials. The pick guards
makes sense.
were made out of celluloid, and I believe the pickup covers were PVC. So the
Makes sense.
UV exposure yellows the PVC and doesn't the celluloid. But the reason that the celluloid turned green is that the white leaches the black middle layer from the triple ply white. And that's why mint green exists as a pick guard, is it just absorbs up that black and kind of shows up through the white, and it turned it like
insanely cool,
minty green. Yeah.
And that's totally cool for me. That's totally cool for me.
I love little stuff like that. Like you saw my bit today about the dowel holes,
in the telly body, yeah.
In the telly body, yeah. You can tell a 60s to I think even early 70s Fender body by those two dowel holes on the back, if it's a natural wood finish or if it's been stripped. It's I love little stuff. Like anytime I learn a new little tidbit like that helps me date something, age something. I like that.
You must be constantly, and that's the cool thing about being guitar techs today and collectors like you, and we have the internet as a resource, because back in the day you had to find an Obi-Wan Kenobi that's been doing it for decades and talk his ear off to find out little tidbits of information like that. There's going to be something you can learn and walk away with.
I think that's really what's been to my advantage too, is I'm a quickly not becoming, but semi younger guy. Like I said, when I think that the thing that I've had going for me that's been going really well is I started selling on Reverb like the year they opened,
Wow.
I was selling for Guitar Mill at the time. I think it was 2 years after they opened that I opened the Guitarcheology store. But basically 6 months after Reverb announced, we had a Guitar Mill Reverb that I was running.
Wow.
So I became intimate with their system very early. I mean, I'm a child of the early internet. I came of age slightly right before the social media boom. So like I grew up on Pro Boards forums and MySpace and had to learn how to code, because those two platforms you had to know just a little bit of, PHP and HTTPS or, HTML. And so like learning all of that kind of stuff and coming of age of the internet, I think has been one of my greater advantages, because if there's anything I specialize in, it's selling guitars on the internet. That's what our bread and butter is. And that's how we make a good lion's share of our money. And I tell people that I'm coming into what I do now, as in Lutherie, owning a guitar store, all of it, at a pretty unique time where a lot of the people who are titans, rightfully titans in this industry, are getting older, they're retiring, they're getting into poor health. George Grun is 77 years old, and I don't know how old Norm is, but I know he's had a lot of health problems in the last few years. And I mean, these are the guys that really inspired me, that I looked up to. When people used to ask me when I was doing this out of a spare bedroom, what are you doing? What do you want to do with this? And I said, well, I don't really think that a millennial George Grun has been appointed yet. So I'd like to throw my name in the hat, for that.
Sure.
That's
carry
what
the
I'm
torch.
for.
Yeah. If they're passing the torch, you're getting it.
But I think the thing that's which that reminds me, how could I forget? We're carrying the Grun Versatar now. That's a last couple weeks development, but George and I have actually met now, and I know it. Weirdly enough, the shop manager, he's building his own guitars now, Grun guitars. They're doing a whole manufacturing wing, and coincidentally, it is right out my back alley. So if you walk out my back alley, there's their factory. So they're literally right there in town with us. And the shop manager at their factory worked with me at Guitar Mill, so we're old buddies too.
Small family.
Yeah, but so we ended up we've got two of theirs in right now too, and they are awesome. Like they're kind of like the old the Tacomas he did back in the day, the Olympias, but they, he got fed up with everyone he tried to contract with, so he's doing it himself, and the team he's got over there is really great. The guitars play great.
But
he's
that begs the question, Jack, you've got guitars all around you to pick and choose from. What are your go-to guitars for bass, for guitar, for acoustic? What are your go-to guitars?
Well, let's see. My basses and acoustics will be easier because I feel like I have a theory that people bond to basses and acoustics in a way that they don't really bond to electrics. I feel like people change electrics more commonly and collect them more commonly. But my main basses are I have two from Sarek basses, previously in Chicago, recently just moved to Asheville, North Carolina. Really, really, really great basses, best basses on the planet. I absolutely love them. I met Jake early on, Jake Sarek. I met him when I was working at Mario's. I think that same NAMM 2016, 2017. And I came by his booth, 4 or 5 times. And by the 4th or 5th time, he's like, do you want a job or something? I was like, no, dude, I want a bass. And I've been playing his stuff so long now that I have Lincoln number 15. That's how early I fell in love with his stuff, got in with him early. But he's made basses for some of my favorite bands now. King Gizzard. He's made basses for Deerhoof. He made not one of my favorite bands, but still impressive. He made a bass for the guy from Fish. I mean, it's just his. I'm really into psych rock and that kind of stuff, and so his roster
Yes.
is really cool to me. But
Cool.
those are my main basses. I have another P bass. I traded an older dude who lived in Minnesota. He built it. It's just awesome. It's got two Nordstrom like PJ set up. It just has a neck that's the size of a baseball bat on it. I love it.
Yeah. A good P bass is always a good go-to.
I'm a P bass guy. I'm a chunky neck guy in general.
Yeah.
I can't really stand jazz basses and their skinny little necks. And my favorite bass player is probably Mike Dirnt of Green Day. Whenever anyone asks me what my bass reference tone is, I'm like, I want to sound like Mike Dirnt, and you just can't do it on a jazz bass. It has to be the P punch, or you can use a ripper or something like that. Matt Freeman from Rancid and Operation Ivy, also
well, that's what Mike Dirnt used. Mike Dirnt used a ripper.
Yeah, he used a ripper, and he had a P bass too. They did a lot of the studio recording with the P bass, and then they did a lot of their like stage and video work with the ripper. But my Sarek Lincoln is based on Mike Dirnt's Dookie era ripper. It's kind of the same vibe. And then as far as acoustics go, absolutely my favorite guitar in my collection, for reasons that should seem fairly obvious, is my father passed away in 2017. I have his 1981 Alvarez Yari. It was one of the Yaris that was made before Yari passed away.
Wow.
And so he actually had his hands on it, which is really cool. But also, cool. I love my dad very dearly, miss him a lot. This whole thing that I've done, wouldn't have been. He was the one who taught me my first guitar chords. He was the one who, bought me all the guitars that I had in high school. He was the one who was smart enough to take out a life insurance policy that gave me the seed money I needed to do all of this.
Perfect.
So that guitar just, it'll never leave my side. People ask me, house is on fire, you can only go get one. That's the one. I'd go save that one. But I did just I have a 1965 Gibson Hummingbird. It is the T-burst one, not the cherry burst one. I bought it in decrepit condition, like I did in most of my guitars. And it felt a little above my pay grade. So I actually hired Dave at Scale Model to do pretty much all the work it needed. Major acoustic repair is not really my jam. I do it.
It's sometimes. Tough. It's a different realm for sure.
I tell people I would be able to do it, and I would do it if I didn't have to keep a mind on running the store or supplying inventory or any of that.
If that's all you did for a week, just focus on that. Yeah.
The problem is that I can only take on guitar repair that I can be interrupted every 15 seconds in the middle of, which limits me to, small wiring work, setups, and like fret work and stuff like that. Cause, I'm at the store, even if I'm working over the bench. Hey, can I do this? And that kind of acoustic work, if the glue's wet and you're on the timer, you can't really stop,
Right.
You know what I mean? Sometimes you're using stuff that dries in an hour. So like, sorry, I really can't come over and help you right now because I got to set all these, or whatever.
That's right.
I usually hire that kind of work out, usually to either Dave or Gerald Strickland at Music City Vintage Guitars. But I had him do the work on that Gibson Hummingbird, and it came out great.
One of my questions, Jack, that I like asking tech guys, what's your favorite tool on your bench? Do you have a favorite tool?
Okay, this is a really, really kind of funny answer, but the Music Nomad winder bit that goes into a drill.
I have that.
Yeah, that thing, man, I use that. I mean, it definitely is the tool I use the most often. Yeah, that is the one, except I use the Music Nomad one that has the blue rubbery stuff on it. But
sure.
Yeah, but they last me about a year, which would be a lifetime of anyone else's, me doing, 8 to 12 guitars a day, a year, setups. And then, yeah, anyway, I love that thing. honorable mention on Amazon. I found an industrial hot glue gun that runs on a DeWalt drill battery. That thing is rad. If you need to, like, you know, goop something off or goop off the inside so that you don't get a ground out or something, that thing's pretty awesome for that.
I was telling my wife the other day that I was thinking about it one night on the bench. I was like, what is my favorite tool? And then I went, you know what? Toothpicks. I use toothpicks for filling holes and strap pins and shoring up strap pins and applying glue to micro areas. And for that day, it was toothpicks.
For a sentimental option, my 1/2-inch driver on my bench at the store was my dad's, and so every time I use it, I think of him, and it feels like he's there, you know. So I like that tool just because of that family connection. The most handy one is another tech on Instagram tipped me off to. On Amazon, you can get these they're tiny Allen drivers that are screwdrivers that fit into like saddle screw adjustment, so you don't have to use the little Allen keys. They're just like long screwdrivers that have the little bitty Allen connections on the end.
Oh, probably for like jewelry and stuff, right?
Yeah,
like
they're awesome.
Oh,
because it's so much easier to like set radius on a setup, you know.
Yes, instead of getting that 45-degree angle one and spinning it around. Well, you know, Stumec has that little screwdriver with the bits that pop in. They've got one with little, you know, hex bits. Now, granted, the selection of hex bits is only like 4 or 5 sizes.
Oh,
yeah, a little limited.
Yeah, well, they sell a set that's like all 5 or 6 whatever sizes. That's really nice. Yeah,
nice.
Oh, and then I never got around to my electric guitars.
Yes,
my number couple.
Pick a couple.
my number one players are my 2 main Marios, which is I have a Tele Deluxe that's got wide range gold foils in it. I love it.
Nice.
And I've got it's a Sunburst 3-tone flake. So it's the old school, like they only did a few of them, but Fender actually did a few like that. But it's silver flake, but it's 3-tone Sunburst. So it looks like
interesting,
pretty rad. And then I recently just bought a Tokai SG Junior.
Is that the white and black one I saw on Instagram?
Yeah, that thing's pretty
sweet. I was wondering what that was. I was like, is that an Epiphone? It looks like something from GarageBand, the video game.
Yeah, no, I like weird, you know, Japanese or whatever guitars. I really like anything that was made from the Dynagaki factory or that, you know, Tokai, Bernie, Fernandez, you know, that kind of stuff. It's all really cool.
Let me ask your opinion, Jack. Speaking of Japanese guitars, I am thinking about getting one of those Aerodyne Stratocasters.
They're awesome.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, we set one up. Actually, we set one up this last week, and then one of my regulars had one, just bought one. He got it on a, you know, super closeout deal. I think he paid like $550 for it. He got a crazy deal on it.
Oh, it's amazing.
And then
the prices are pretty low.
Well, I mean, put a pin in that because I have some thoughts there, but we ended up getting the jazz bass of the Aerodyne series in this week too, just as a trade-in.
Oh,
it is also awesome. And again, I'm not a jazz bass guy, but man, I played it for a good minute and it is a killer. But yeah, I'd say go for it, especially if you got a good price on them. This year has been a particularly interesting year in my humble gear selling experience. Like this year, I've told a lot of people that I feel like the rule book that I've been working out of for the past 8 years has kind of just been like house style thrown out the window, you know? Like we are witnessing quite a shift this year. And I don't feel as nervous about it as I think some other stores should. As we might have kind of mentioned, I'm a bottom feeder of the guitar world. You know, I'm buying garbage guitars and rebuilding specialty projects out of them. There'll never be a shortage of that. There are so many guitars on the planet in disrepair, you know. I do worry about some more of the shops that are focusing mainly on new fare, but the trend that we've seen, and I've seen with a lot of the shops here in the Nashville area, is that over COVID, right, guitars boomed. We sold so many guitars. Mario, I know I was still there, sold a ton of guitars. It just, you know, and that kind of aftermath wave, you know, of boom growth has just kind of been continuing for the past 3 years or so. And then I'd say about, you know, towards the end of maybe immediately post the Christmas buying season 2023, the whole dynamic started to change a little bit. Where people are now, well, I mean, I don't have to tell anyone, inflation, economics, you know, things are tough right now in a lot of industries and for a lot of people, and people's paychecks aren't going as far as they used to, and all this kind of stuff, paired with that unsustainable growth of that market hit a glass ceiling. Like it just, I think people realize like we can't keep charging $1,000 more and $1,000 more for vintage Les Pauls, you know, and it's going to hit a where no one's going to start. People will stop buying them eventually. You know, the market will dictate. You know, you can. I tell people all the time, you can put something up for sale, put whatever crazy price you want on it, but nobody's going to buy it, right? And at a certain point, the market hit a point where no one's going to buy it. Pair that with everyone's tightening belts at home, you know. So what we've seen a lot of is it's become a buyer's market, where it's been a seller's market for quite a while now. But now it's going back to being a buyer's market where, you know, I have people, they're coming into me and they're saying, hey, I'm really hard up on cash. I need to pay XYZ bill. Will you buy this from me in cash? And I'm like, sorry, I'm loaded to the ears here. I've just got so much stuff that I've bought this year because everybody's had to pay XYZ bill, and they're just looking to get rid of the gear they bought over COVID that they never ended up learning how to play, or, you know, some of them are really sad, honestly. And like, I've done a situation a couple times where I could see the dude almost had tears in his eyes, you know, bringing the guitar down to sell it to me. And I'm like, man, listen, I'll give you like a month, you know, I can stash this back. You bring me back the money I paid you for it. I'll give it a free pawn, basically, you know, like, like just to let me sleep at night, you know, kind of stuff. But what I'm getting to is that the end result of this is that I don't think a lot of people, especially people who are on the techie side, like the marketing and the business side of it is probably what I'm best at. You know, like I'm a very passable guitar tech, you know, I think. I mean, maybe this is imposter syndrome speaking or whatever, but like I've never really prided myself on my like extreme luthiery prowess. In fact, I've probably like avoided for a long time using the term luthier. You know, I've more
it's tough.
I'm a guitar tech, you know, that's what I repair guitars, because the term, I mean, and we do build guitars, we just build guitars out of other trash guitars, right?
Okay.
But like the term luthier kind of conjures up this like going down to the lumber yard and tapping on the board, you know, and that's just not what I do, you know, like I'm a guitar upcycler, you know, that's what we do. But the marketing side of it and the business side of it, like that's primarily what I did at Mario's, and it's, I think, primarily what I do now, you know, as I run the business side of things. But all of this stuff is to say that now that we're in a buyer's market, prices have dropped significantly past 6 months. You're talking about, I've had to have some really tough talks with a couple of my consigners because they brought me a Norland era, you know, Les Paul 6 months ago, and it was selling for $5,500 on average. And in the past 6 months, there's been a flood of them go on to Reverb, and now they're selling for $3,500 or $4,000 on average. You're talking about, you know, vintage guitars that are taking as much as, you know, $1,000, $1,500 on average of a dip. I've told people too, I think this will go back. You know, I think this dip will last until the next little economic boom, whatever that might be, you know, and then it'll bounce back a little bit. But
I was talking to Jim Glinsky of Glinsky Customs out of Austin, and he and I had a huge discussion on when the boomers that are collecting these vintage guitars, when they start fading away, the market's just going to be flooded with all these great instruments. You know, if you keep your eyes open, you'll find those estimators out there that have no idea what it's worth, and you may walk off with some pretty good gold nuggets.
Well, not to mention that the part of this that I've thought about is that when the boomers pass away and the older Gen X folks pass away, there's going to be this flood of vintage guitars on the market, which if economics would dictate is going to drastically decrease, at least for a while, the vintage guitar market on the whole. You could almost it's not going to quite be like this, but it's going to be a what I would call a small bubble bursting, you know, like these prices inflated, and then, you know, good luck getting $20,000, $25,000 out of your 1961 Les Paul Jr. if you've got, you know, suddenly 24 more of them are hitting reverb, and they're being sold by people's like kids or estates or lawyers or whatever. So they're not really particularly concerned with getting absolutely top dollar. They'd rather have, you know, 6 to 8 grand in the hand now than 15 to 20 grand in the hand later. And I mean, in some cases you can't really blame them, depending on, you got a funeral to pay for, you know, whatever. And so I think that we're really in an interesting time. And actually this circles back around to why I think that I'm in me and other younger sellers like me that are in a particularly good position, because a lot of stores like Grun, like Norm, like Carter, like all of these stores, these legacy stores that have been around for a really long time, they are immaculately perfect at running a guitar store. Like probably no one better. George Grun literally wrote the book, right? But what they're having to do is they've had the script changed on them all of a sudden in the past 10 years, you know, basically since the birth of reverb, the script has changed. And now they have to learn how to sell guitars in this completely new online cyber world, you know, with being older men, a lot of them, I can understand. They're like, oh, I'm too old. I don't want to adapt to this, you know, like I can see that, you know. And so the advantage that I've had is that I grew up with the internet. I grew up selling things online. That part of it I'm really good at. It's the owning a guitar store in the real world part of it that I've had to learn how to do, which has had its fair share of challenges, I will say, and definitely, you know, long weeks and all of that. But I think ultimately I would rather have it that way than the other way around.
Absolutely.
You know,
and Jack, you're doing it in spades. You're doing it in spades for sure.
I do appreciate that. That's been my biggest thing. I think the summation of everything that I just got into gets into, we are in a really weird time right now. I think we're on the verge of a big change. I don't know exactly what the change in the gear market will be, but there's all these sort of like factors that are, you know, we don't have a storm going on, but we have a little bit of rain over here and a little bit of wind over here, you know, the boomers passing away and that flood of the gear market, tightening inflation so people have less expendable income. There are all these things happening that just are pointing to something's got to give, right? And I think that's where we're headed right now. And I think it's a very interesting and exciting time to be in, you know, the place that I'm in right now, because if not exhausting, but I feel like every week I'm kind of coming back up and getting like, okay, what's happening now? And it's sometimes happening on a, you know, even a week by week basis. And sometimes we get settled into thing for a couple of months and something will change. But it's just things we're hitting the gear market the way it has been, I think will be different soon. How it's going to be different, I don't know. But I've been thinking a lot about it.
If I walk into Guitarcheology today, am I seeing your entire inventory, or do you have guitars in the back that you just rotate them out?
So we have no back really. Guitarcheology is kind of just a shotgun building. And we got a little bit of utility in the back.
What you see is what you get.
So pretty much everything's there. We definitely always have stuff that's not on the website yet, you know. Sometimes, like if I can sell something before I have to bother taking pictures of it and stuff, then you know what. Sure.
Perfect.
instead of the big room in the back where the guitars are, is I used to run my shop or the whole store out of my workshop that's in my backyard. It's about a
Oh, wow.
800 square foot aluminum building that I, insulated and put a mini
Sweet.
split unit and stuff in. But there are probably about 150 to 200 guitars in there that are in
Wow.
various stages of disrepair.
Wow.
And then, the store probably has another, 3 to 350. I don't know exactly, but
Okay. Okay.
the business
Well,
itself
someday,
probably owns around 5 to 600 guitars.
someday
Broken.
those 150 guitars, those misfit toys will get to be in the showroom.
Yeah, they some of them are there for various reasons. Some are parts loaners. Like I just have them there to steal parts off of them every once in a while.
Okay. Okay.
Some of them are just going to be really big projects, so I just keep kind of pushing them around my plate. And then some of them are there for silly reasons. Like there's not really much wrong with it, but we have two more like it on the floor right now,
Sure.
or
Okay. Cool.
regular reasons. And then when those two sell, we'll pull that one and put it up there. I really have I want my store when you come in to feel like sort of a collection of the best pawn shop finds within the 2-hour area. I want every guitar that you pick up off the wall to have this sort of legendary item in a video game concept.
Nice.
Where
Sure.
I think a lot about, and I know citing Harry Potter is really controversial these days, but I'm a millennial. I grew up reading the Harry Potter books. But I
There
think
you
about
go.
like Ollivander's, the wand store in Harry Potter. When you come pick a
Yes.
guitar
Right.
off the wall, I want
It
your
picks
hair to blow
you.
up in the light,
Yeah.
the
There
guitar
you
chooses
go.
the player, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But I
Absolutely, man.
find if I have too many of the same model or too many Sunburst Strats or too
Sure.
many, whatever this model or that model, then it kind of kicks that illusion or that sort of vibe. So I try to keep it to where we have one, maybe two of any given style of anything, so that the grand,
Smart.
the
Smart.
store is more of a pastiche of different
Yes.
styles. And we really,
Of
when we were laying out the
patchwork.
store, we took more influence from record stores than get to other guitar stores. We
Oh,
wanted
sure.
to sort of have the vibe of what's that, oh God, what's that Jack Black John Cusack movie, High Fidelity?
High fidelity. Yep.
Yeah, that kind, the clerks are talking about the differences between P90s and single coils and
Yeah.
arguing
Yeah.
about television's Marquee Moon. And then, we
That's
had all
right.
we wanted to create a community space, rather someplace people
Very
go to
cool.
hang out. And then all the guitars are more sorted by genre, than this manufacturer, that manufacturer. Like
Oh, smart.
I've
I
I've
like
got
that.
my here's my shreddy and pointy section, and here's the
Okay.
vintage Japanese dime store section, and
Cool.
so we
Do
have the
you do you
store
have
kind
a
of laid out
big
more like that.
do you have a big fat hollow body jazz guitar section?
We do. That section
All right.
seems to grow, and we'll get a lot in, and then we'll sell a few down, and so that
Okay.
one breathes a lot more than the other ones. Whereas
That'll be the section that I'll gravitate towards.
oh, I've got a ES 135 that someone stripped down and refinished oxblood metallic that you're gonna love.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a very unjazzy color, but I'm into it. I'll take
It
a
looks
look.
good. Remind me, I'll send you a picture of it. It looks great.
That'd be awesome. So,
Yeah.
Jack, you have your wife on your Instagram in a lot of posts, and your dog.
Mhm.
How integral is she to your business?
Irreplaceable, and
Yeah,
she helps me put my pants on in the morning. So no,
sure.
no, my wife is I mean, every man's gonna say this, but my wife is the best.
Mhm.
I mean, I just couldn't do this without her. Before we opened the brick and mortar location, she was very limitedly, if not really at all, involved. When I was just running sort of an online reverb store. In fact, I started Guitarcheology in 2016. As the online part, the selling on reverb, that kind of stuff. And we didn't open the brick and mortar until 2021. We started preparations for that. And so in the time between that, I ran pretty much everything myself. I did the listings, I took the pictures, I kept up with the books, I, ran the taxes, I did all of it. That would kill me now. I mean, this thing has got, I tell people all the time, this business was once a snowball that I could, wrap my hands around, and I could have stopped it from rolling downhill. But now if I tried to do that, I would just get sucked into it and be, rolling down the mountain. It's just gotten away from me, And
what's her name?
Jamie.
Jamie. And what's your dog again?
Toby. But mainly the thing that Jamie brings is that she is good at everything that I am not, and vice versa. I'm a very big picture. We have the classic setup. I'm a very big picture creative type. She's a very by the books, structures and numbers type. So she does all of our business taxes, payroll taxes, keeping the books. She helps me with the website. She helps me with listings. Not to mention, when I was developing the rubber bridges, she was who I bounced all my ideas off for that. She'll constantly sit for 2 or 3 hours, and she doesn't play guitar. She doesn't care, really about this.
Sure.
She cares, but she doesn't care from the like, I grew up playing guitar. I've been playing guitar since I was 12, and I love everything about the guitar. She doesn't care from that perspective. This is a whole different thing for her, but she's become integral in helping me sit down and sort of talk these sorts of things out. And as I tell people, she creates a hell of a spreadsheet that helps keep track of stuff. Or like, hey, I'd like a spreadsheet that calculates how much I should pay people when they bring in trade-ins, and she can build me that kind of stuff, which is great because I can only count to 47, maybe 48 on a good day. But yeah, I mean, I really couldn't overstate. This has now become our business. I know it says Jack Guitarcheology on the door.
By pure osmosis.
Yeah. She's now just as much an owner, and the business couldn't run without her, as if I were missing. So
yeah. Jack, that reminds me, the rubber bridge. Tell me about it.
Oh, good Lord. We're going to be here for another 7 hours.
I know. It's a very intense subject, and I read about it on your website. You have a whole section called Rubber Bridge. It's acoustic guitars that have been hooked up with this bridge.
We do electric too.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to see that, actually. What if you could condense it into a Cliff Notes explanation? Because you're right, the technology behind it and the theory and the concept is very in-depth, tonality wise. Just how did that happen? How did you?
I spent 6 to 8 months over the latter part of the pandemic, trying this, trying that, trying materials, getting the rubber bridge thing down. Everyone who I've brought in to teach it to, my staff that I bring in, and I'm like, you're gonna help me with the rubber bridges. This is how we do it. And the thing they always say to me when they leave is, I would have never thought that there was that much to it, and I'm like, it's a whole process. But what the rubber bridge thing is a primarily like singer-songwriter thing. It came up in the Americana coffee shops. The originator of the design is Old Style Guitars in California. It's run by a man named Reuben Cox. He basically invented the rubber bridge. I'm maybe one of 5 or 6 guys now that do rubber bridges, pretty regularly. I know the water slide guitars guy does them. I do them. There's a few other smaller builders that do them. But when I started doing mine, basically what happened is I was putting those like Harmony Stellas back together. I would buy one that was trashed. I'd glue it back together. I'd fix the brace on the inside, glue the heel joint back together. And then I'd put a pickup in them and sell them as, stage ready parlor guitars, thinking that, hip indie Americana artists, all that, would like a vintage guitar that they could use on stage. And, so I did that for a number of years. And, I think it was like right before the pandemic, maybe 2019, I got my first, hey, would you do a rubber bridge? And I think my reaction at the beginning was the same as everyone else's. Like, why the hell would you want that? Isn't resonance the whole point? How would you? I think too, my brain went immediately to logistics. I don't know anything about rubber working. How would I, what would, and all of that kind of stuff. And then maybe fast forward about a year, I had in 1 week, like 13 requests for a rubber bridge. It just like, And I came home to my wife. I was still working at Guitar Mill at the time. And I came home, and my routine used to be to get off work. And while I was still at work, I'd check the reverb messages for Guitarcheology before I left the office. And so I did that off the clock, obviously, and left. And then I got home, and I'd gotten all those messages about the rubber bridge. And I said to Jamie, I was like, I've got to figure this out. There's something here. I wasn't coming at it from a like necessity is the mother of invention or all that. I just, after all those messages, saw like there is money on the table here for someone who is willing to figure out how to make this rubber bridge and make it affordable to smaller musicians. Because at the time, if you wanted a rubber bridge from like Ruben, the originator, it was a long wait. It was a $1,500 or more for the guitar and all of this. So I really wanted to get one out that was easy to produce enough that I could sell them for between $450 and $900, under $1,000. Try to keep them under $1,000.
For a guitar rigged with the bridge.
Yeah, the guitar rigged with the bridge. Yeah, you can't really sell the bridge. There's a couple of people who have figured out adjustable rubber bridges, but for the most part, they have to be kind of tailor-made to the guitar. So making them a la carte doesn't really work. I tried that for a while. Just kind of ended a bunch of angry customers because I constantly felt I was sort of stabbing in the dark at the height, they needed. And so generally it ended up in 2 or 3, like, oh no, this one's too high. Okay, now make me a new one. So I stopped doing that. I will do conversions for people. If you send me or bring me the guitar, I'll convert it to a rubber bridge.
So if I have a hollow body, hollow body jazz guitar, and I've got the huge floating bridge, a piece of rubber could elevate that high.
So the way that I do those now, without getting too deep into the way that I do my rubber bridges, because I will talk to anybody about the way that I do anything. With the exception being the minutia of how I make my rubber bridges, because I'm still a little protective of that.
Makes sense. Proprietary.
And I've had people call me out on this, but honestly, if you'd spent 6 to 8 months of your life thinking about something, you'd probably want to keep it to yourself for a little while too.
Absolutely.
But the way that I do it requires
it can be done.
I wrap wood with rubber instead of a lot of the other guys just cut rubber bridges out of like different strips of rubber. But the way that I do mine, I actually wrap wood. So the way that I've been making the ones for the big arch tops is I use a vintage Harmony bridge for the core. And so it's already kind of tall. And what I do is I sand a little bit of a radius into it. And then when I wrap it, it'll sit on the arch top.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, I can.
Can I ask? Are there pre-cut? Are they really okay? Yeah. Are there pre-cut grooves for the strings, or is it the nature of the rubber that holds the string in place?
Yeah, they're actually not cut; they're pressed into the rubber. But yeah, we press slots into them.
So you're right. That's a guitar by guitar basis then for string width and all that.
Yeah. It really is. If you want it to play the best it can play, you'll want me to do the setup on it. I've had a lot of trouble trying to convey to people, because you kind of, for lack of a better word, you got to sweet talk the rubber bridges a little. And every once in a while I get to putting one on and I realize, this one's going to be too tall, or I overbuilt this one, or it's going to be too wide, or it's just not going to sit right. And so I chuck it in the bucket and I start over, and sometimes I've made, I end up going back and using those for another project, because one guitar too tall is another guitar's perfect, but I'm never afraid to, like, if I'm working with one and I've just got a bad feeling about it, I just chuck it and make another one, which is the kind of thing you can't do if I ship people rubber bridges, right?
Right.
But yeah, I actually had a pretty nice experience recently. So that is to say, I got drug into the rubber bridge thing, kind of kicking and screaming. It was not a thing that I was like organically into, but it was a thing that I think I've kind of come around on, because originally I was sort of skeptical of it, even though I was making them and I was making pretty good money on it. I've really come to see their usages now, especially as far as their uses in the studio and for songwriting. They really work great for songwriting because they're, kind of muted and understated and allow your voice to sing up over the guitars. And they're great in the studio because you can use them for thickening acoustic guitar tracks. Whereas like you could just track your regular guitar, your regular acoustic guitar, and then at about a 30% in a different pan, put the rubber bridge track down.
Gotcha.
And it gives it this percussiveness. But when I started making them, Ruben was the main guy making them. I have a lot of respect for his work. I also didn't want to just blatantly rip this guy off, right? I was really careful. I tell people all the time, if I'd have just ripped off Ruben's design, it would not have taken me 6 months to come up with what I came up with. I could have had rubber bridges ready in a month if I'd have just gone copy paste to his thing, But I really didn't want to do that. And also I had a couple of qualms with his design that I wanted to try to sort out. One, his design is really dead sounding, and I wanted mine to be slightly less dead sounding. And two, his are block, like rectangular. And so the top point of them has slots, but they're sitting sort of almost like those Goto sitar bridges. They have a pretty wide intonation point. I was finding that when I was toying with trying to make sort of rectangular style ones, I was running into pretty wonky intonation issues. And rubber bridges are never going to intonate perfectly because you don't have individual saddle pieces to adjust.
Saddles,
yeah. But the way that
yours is a tubular shape, so there's less string content.
Well, actually, it's more of a like triangular prism shape on the inside.
Makes sense.
Kind of like basically, I just based the design for the inner core on the Harmony Stella bridge. I just had to make it a little bit smaller because when you wrap it with the rubber, it makes it bigger, right?
Sure.
And so mine comes to not quite as much, but more of an intonation point. So it intonates about as well as like an S or like a Les Paul Jr. with a wraparound bridge.
Sure.
Kind of.
And you have this great YouTube video of all the different acoustics with players playing them and electrics. You're right. There were electrics.
Yeah, those are actually my guys. That's my staff playing them in that.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
And shout out to my buddy Cameron at Peerless Films, who is a master videographer who came out and did killer work for those videos.
Well, there you go. There you go.
But yeah, if the rubber bridges, I never really got into the function of them, but the main point is that the rubber mutes out the overtones, like the harmonic overtones. So really all you get is just the attack and decay of the note, just doop doop. And it makes this sort of bouncy, deadened thing, I get a lot of people who ask me too, like, why is the rubber bridge better? And it's just that's the wrong question.
It's not. It's just different.
It's just different. Yeah, it's just like a regular guitar is a flat brush, and this is a wide fan brush. It's just a different tool in the toolkit.
Well, Jack, thanks for the explanation on that. I was a bit baffled. I've never seen anything like it before.
If you it's crazy. I tell people this is the thing. I've kind of gotten on a tirade to Jamie about this over the years, where I'm like, of all the things that I've done in my life, of all the bands I've run at, of all the things I've poured my soul into, the thing that I'm known best for is wrapping wood with rubber. like something that I just sort of like was tinkering with on the side, like
practice safe bridges, practice safe bridges, wrapping them in rubber.
we went to New York last year. I really like the Nuggets compilations, garage rock compilations, and they did a 50th anniversary, but they only did it in LA and New York. So we went to the New York show. And while we were there, when we go out of town, we go to guitar stores. We're guitar store people.
Sure,
it was my hobby before it was my profession. And I also really like going to other stores in other parts of the country because I learned something, like, I would have never thought to do that way. Like, I would have never thought to just have a bin of Tudor batteries to sell. That's genius, or something like that.
There you
go. But we went to Chelsea Guitars in the Chelsea Hotel. And we went,
beautiful. So cool.
We went to Brothers Guitars, which is just outside of Central Park. It's a gorgeous shop.
Nice.
And while we were there, I went in, I did around. I don't like coming and be like, hey, I'm from another guitar store. That's a little weird. So I just went in.
Yeah.
And if you strike up conversation naturally with whoever's working, I'll pepper it in there. And so I got to talking to the techs of both places. turned out it was the owner of Chelsea. And I said, oh yeah, own a store in the Nashville area. And he said, oh, what's your shop called? And I said, oh, Jack's Guitarcheology. And he goes, oh, you're the Rubber Bridge guy. And so like even like 12 hours away from home, you know, like I would expect that Nashville, that makes sense. But like I was not expecting it. And I mean, it was that we had one featured in a JHS video. So I really got to shout that out to Josh.
Nice.
He was the one that really pumped this in the beginning for us. And then more lately, we've built a couple for some pretty notable artists. We just built one. We built two for Noah Kahn. Built two for the Goo Goo Dolls. Built one for Charlie Worsham from Old Crow Medicine Show.
Excellent.
The Rubber Bridge thing, I never got around to. You want to take a wild guess as to why I got 13 requests in 1 week over the pandemic?
You said that, and I'm like, how did that suddenly happen?
Well, like anytime that happens a lot, right? Where we'll suddenly get a request for a candy apple red Strats with a humbucker in the bridge, and that's usually the indication that someone played one somewhere.
Yes,
or someone made a forum post somewhere that this was the soup du jour. You know, the thing that launched my Rubber Bridge thing was. And the reason I didn't know this till years later, but the reason I got 13 requests in one day was Taylor Swift, my friend. Taylor Swift put out a session during the pandemic called the Folklore Session. And in that session, her and her two guitar players are playing vintage Harmony silver tones with the Reuben Cox Rubber Bridge on them. And that is how the majority of the mainstream public learned what a Rubber Bridge is.
Wow.
And that's when I got, you know, umpteen thousand requests for one.
Dude, sweet.
So thank you,
I'm glad
Taylor.
I asked. Yeah, no doubt.
Thank you,
really.
Taylor Swift, for the bump, I guess.
Hey, Jack, I end every podcast. Thank you for your time, by the way. I agree. Considering how freaking busy you are, and you know, you dabble your toe in one pool, but you've got your feet, you're all in. You're swimming around in it. I really appreciate your time.
I feel like my mom, the jack of all trades thing, really sunk into me because I just I don't know. I got a lot of things I want to do. There's a lot of things I'm not doing now that I'd love to be doing. Writing,
you know, keep it up and you'll explode.
Right. I know. I gotta bring myself back. But yeah, you should probably cut me off because I will talk forever.
Well, they always say that the jack of all trades is unfortunately a master of none.
Yeah, that's I tell people that too. I've actually thought about getting you know how people have those like over the belly button tattoos, you know, like the Thug Life, you know, Tupac tattoo. I think mine is gonna say Master of None.
Master of None.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I don't really strive to be a master of anything. Being pretty good at a lot of things, that's more my speed. You know, being passively good. Like I said, I'm not the world's greatest luthier. I'll be the first to tell you. I can sit here and name, you know, 5-10 guys that, like, if you needed a massive acoustic repair, I would send you to instead of me. But I am passable enough at it to run a fairly successful business in it, you know, and then I'm also passable enough at web design to run the website for that business. And then I'm passive enough at graphic design to do the graphic design for that business. So I don't think it's such a bad strategy. I kind of take pride in the master of none thing.
Absolutely, man. I dig it. I totally dig it. I end every episode, Jack, with the same question. And you probably researched it. I'm blown away at how much people research this question. They say that they've lost sleep over it. But I'm going to ask you, if you were stranded on a desert island, what would be the 3 guitar tracks that you would have on your mixtape, your desert island mixtape?
Okay, I didn't lose sleep about this, but I did a couple of, I asked all the guys, I was like, what were your picks be? And I think my mix is a little eclectic.
That's good. I love eclectic. Of course. If it's not eclectic, I think there'd be something wrong. You are a master of eclectic, I can tell you that much.
That is my whole MO. So I think the first track I would pick, a lot of people ask me who my favorite guitar player is of all time, and I have a pretty unstandard answer. I think it would be Jerry Reed. Jerry Reed is, to me, nobody is as impressive to watch play the guitar as Jerry Reed. so much of the way he played seeped into other genres and other things.
That's right. Yes. Good
I would
choice.
put The Claw by Jerry Reed.
Excellent.
I think maybe one of the best guitar tracks of all time. It is a guitar player's guitar track written by guitar players for guitar players. You know, it is just
Nice.
like
Nice.
candy crack to us, you know.
Very cool.
So I
Very
think
cool.
Claw, I would put The Claw on there. I would put okay, Heart's Crazy on You, but primarily just the minute to minute and a half in the beginning where Nancy Wilson does the insane, like that whole song,
Absolutely.
the feeling of that like Baroque interlude into the that's just I feel like to me Nancy Wilson really gets looked over when you're talking like great guitar heroes. There's no reason she shouldn't be listed up there with Pete Townsend and Eddie Van Halen and all of these guys. I think honestly that misogyny is a lot of the reason why, you know, rock and roll is such a boys club. I think that's maybe why she's been looked over for the incredible player that she is.
And you know, I hate to say it, Jack, when my first concert was in Anchorage, Alaska, and it was Huey Lewis and the News opening for Heart in 1982. And I hate to say it, but I wasn't heavily in. I mean, I had guitar, I played around with guitar, but I didn't watch Nancy for her playing. I watched her because she was wearing these amazing fishnet stockings.
Yeah. She played incredible and looked smoking hot doing it the whole time. Even now at like 70 years old or whatever,
aged really, really well.
She looks great. Yeah. And she still plays great. She still plays incredible.
Absolutely. When they do their Zeppelin covers, I'm just in awe of their talent. And her sister still got the lungs.
She does. I'm a big Nancy Wilson stan. I think she gets passed over a lot needlessly. She's an incredible guitarist. And then the last one, I think I'm going to go to my, I had a couple of I'm going to do my 2 honorable mentions in the end, if that's okay. But
sure, absolutely.
I think for the third for sure one, I'd have to pick Television's Venus de Milo.
Wow, Television.
That descending, ascending counter motion melody after the chorus in that song, that is just angelic. It is one of those guitar licks that every time I hear it, it gives me goosebumps. It sends chills up my spine. It is just like angels ascended from heaven, and it came in the form of Tom Verlaine's guitar riff, you know.
Awesome. Great choice, man.
I would put that one on there. But my 2 honorable mentions, the first one is for 2 notes. The guitar has 2 notes. But in the Nuggets comps, there's a song called Liar Liar by a band called the Castaways. And in that song, there is just this kind of thing, like where he does sort of a pinch and release on the trim. And he's got it running through like a old tube amp and sort of a kind of a Leslie maybe or something kind of sound. And if I could make every note I play on the guitar sound as cool as those 2 notes, I would be like, I'd be the most famous guitar player on planet Earth. There's just something about those 2 notes that like really speaks to my soul.
Cool.
And then I feel like I would be really amiss, and I'm kind of having a hard time picking any one particular song. So I'm probably going to have to give it to Moon Over Marin. But East Bay Ray, his guitar tone is just unlike anyone else's on planet Earth. When you hear the Dead Kennedys, you know it's the Dead Kennedys because you've got that overdriven, massively blown out, you know, Roland Echoplex, you know.
When I first heard Holiday in Cambodia, I didn't think punk rock could be so cool.
Yeah, to me, I love the Dead Kennedys. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. And I think it's because they prove that I like anything that shows you can be a punk rocker and also a very talented musician. You know, like the 2 are not mutually exclusive. Like not everything has to be the Ramones. I love the Ramones. Not everything has to be the Ramones. Like
that's right.
you can be television, you can be the Dead Kennedys, you
Yes.
can be Ted
Good
Leo and the
choice.
Pharmacists. You can be Gang of Four. There are incredibly talented bands that played punk rock music. And so like I think I would
East
give
Bay
it
Ray.
there.
East Bay Ray made it on one of the lists. I love it, man.
Yeah,
That's
East Bay
awesome.
Ray's guitar tone just speaks to something deep in my soul, you know. It puts you
Whatever
on edge,
happened.
but like in a good way. You know, you feel like someone just sounded a prison alarm and all the lights just came on. You know, I don't know. It's just so jarring and it fits so well with the Dead Kennedys and Jello's voice. And
I need to find out what happened to you. Whatever happened to East Bay Ray? Did he
I
pass
saw him
away?
2 years ago. I saw the Dead Kennedys. You know, they had their new lead singer, and you know, to
Okay.
me, Dead Kennedys without Jello
Jello
Biafra,
is the only, yeah.
it's Diet Coke, you know. But
It's
um,
that's right.
but yeah, they were great too, and it was East Bay Ray and DL Peligro and Klaus, and they still
Nice.
sounded great. Yeah,
Very cool. Oh man,
and
I'm
DL
envious.
passed away shortly after that, so thank God I got to see him. You know.
No doubt. No doubt. Jack, thank you so much for your time, my man. I greatly appreciate it. Jack's Guitarcheology. I'm following you on Instagram.
Please,
I'm a fan of
everyone,
your
follow
web.
me on Instagram. I'm very
Yeah, you
goofy.
got a
I do
ton of
goofy stuff.
followers, man.
Yeah,
And your website, and you can find his store on reverb.com. Is it my understanding you do a podcast as well?
I am working on it. That is one of when
Okay.
I said my big list of things I'd eventually like to get to. I love to
Yeah.
write. I'm a big writer.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I've wanted to do the Guitarcheology podcast for a while. I'm actually the reason I signed on to do this is I finally set up something that sounds halfway decent, you know. So
Good
uh
choice.
but my idea for that was to do you know, I'm full of like the pinhole route thing and you know just these little nuggets of you know weird
Mm-hmm.
guitar knowledge. So I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
about having episodes like that, of course having maybe a few interview or discussion episodes, and then I had a couple of little bits like doing your short episodes that are the one that never got away, where I bring guitar players on and we talk about you know the guitar they never should have sold, because I hear that a lot, you know,
Yes.
the white whale, the one that got away, you know, stories.
Yes. Yes,
um
absolutely. Do you have one that got away?
Yeah, there's one that I think about a lot. When I was early into guitarcheology, when I was like first starting out and I didn't have a whole lot of money to just like, you know, siphon a guitar off every now and again, like I do now. I had it was a late 90s, early 2000s Epiphone Wilshire in limited edition Inverness
Oh,
green.
wow.
And I've always liked Wilshires. Unfortunately, I've never had one that I've bonded with as a guitar, but I love them just the way they look and all of that. And this one played great. I remember it being one of the better playing Epiphones I'd ever played in my life. But at
Nice.
that point in time, I couldn't really afford to take what was then one of my pricier pieces of inventory, you know, and keep it
Mm-hmm.
because it
Mm-hmm.
would have, you know, kind of ground everything to a halt. So I
Yeah.
sold it, and sometimes I regret selling that one. I had this P bass once that had like a Lisa Frank style like dolphin scene, like dolphins jumping out of the ocean,
Oh, wow.
like it looked like it should have been on a Trapper Keeper or like a Panama City Beach t-shirt or something.
Yeah,
And I called it the Dolphin Bass. It had a maple neck with black blocks, and it sounded and played great, but as goofy as it looked. And I
sure.
sold it, and I kind of regret it. Like of all the guitars over the years, I think about the Dolphin Bass somehow, and like for the like 250, $300 or whatever I got out of it, I should have just kept it because
Well,
it
here's
was
what you
such a
do. You
fun
get
bit.
your database that your wife has created of all the customers, and you go track it down and you ask that customer, hey, do you want to sell that back to me?
This was back when I was still doing parking lot deals, because
Oh,
this was like
geez.
way back when. But yeah, I think about the Inverness Green Wilshire and I think about the Dolphin Bass.
Interesting choices. And I wouldn't expect anything less from you, man. Jack, hey, man, again, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I wish you all the super very best.
Dude,
But
your workshop is so much cleaner than mine. Like so much cleaner.
I'm a neat freak, and that's, yeah. So
I'm
it's
not.
not quite fair.
I have the kind of ADHD that puts the blinders on me until I absolutely cannot stand it anymore. And then I go, we have to clean now. And then we clean furiously for 2 days. And then I get back to work until it gets to be a nightmare again.
Have you ever seen those Instagram videos with those Japanese potters, and they're making those little teapots out of a chunk of clay,
Yes.
and they just lay it out, and it's so mesmerizing and zen-like and meditative. I'm like that. I'm like, I've used the Z file, and I'm going to go put it back. I've used I would drive a business nuts if I was a tech in their company. They'd be like, dude, just get the guitar done. Calm down. I'm charging by the job, not by the hour.
Yeah, I think my repair style would be more akin to like that country mechanic who's really good, but when he gets into your car, he just starts yanking shit out and like, oh, that's not gonna do, and like.
But your car drives out of his garage purring.
Yeah,
like
yeah. The guitar or the car drives out better than it's ever driven before. But you're an anxious wreck the whole time watching this good old boy just go to town.
Just walk away.
I had this buddy named Luke who was an AES mechanic, and I think about him a lot because I feel like my tech style is similar to his mechanic style. He would do stuff like when he was working on my truck, he'd see something and he'd go, I wish I didn't have seen that, but I did. I'd be like, what? He's like, oh, that oil, ring, O-ring there is loose or whatever.
There's another hour I'm gonna have to spend.
There's another hour I'm gonna have to spend. If I hadn't have seen it, I could have just ignored it. Yeah. But like that's if I see something, I have to fix it. But
I know.
I have a really hard time when people come by and they're like, they have a guitar that really needs a setup, and they're like, just restring it. And I'm like, oh, that hurts my soul to do that,
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to ask then, because you run into that all the time as a tech. They bring it in for one thing, but there's 5 other things. And you're like, if you want it to be playable, you have to, and that's why I called my business Your Guitar Mechanic, because you're gonna take it into that mechanic. He's gonna see that O-ring, and he's going to be like, look, if you want this car to run right, I know you're paying for this, but it really needs this too. Isn't that kind of it's a hard sell up, isn't it?
It's the way that I run things is, now granted, what I'm about to tell you is incredibly tailored to whatever guitar they have. Like, this would not apply to a Gibson, a Martin, anything over, let's say, a $600 threshold. But in a lot of cases, the way that works is, take, for example, I've got this older lady right now and her grandson. Her husband died, left grandson a 70s Alvarez 12-string. They wanted me to just restring it, get it playable again. We start putting tension on it. We notice that the bridge is, and it's just not going to hold tension without ripping the bridge completely off. Puts me in that situation, right, where I have to make the uncomfortable phone call. And the biggest thing to do in those situations is to just be as honest as possible, because what you're fighting here is the trust your mechanic, thing, where like, I'm not trying to get you in for a whole bunch of other repairs you don't need, which is what your assumption is going to be. So the best way to do is to be as clinical, I guess, for lack of a better word, and just explain, we put tension on it. Now your bridge is lifting. That means that there's nothing there to hold it. And, you just explain it to them as calmly as possible. And then what makes our business unique and what I do is a lot of techs would be like, oh, well, this is lifting, so you're going to have to scrape it, and you're going to have to sand it, and you're going to have to hide glue it back down and let it dry. And they think that it all has to be like Gallup school level. I'm working on a war era Martin level luthery, and like, really, this is just an old lady who needs her grandson to have a guitar to play, So I told her, I was like, listen, I can do the full repair where I scrape the bridge off, and I, glue it back down with tight bond or hide glue, and I do the whole full court press on it. Or I've got this clear resin epoxy that I can take into a hypodermic needle and inject into that crack and call it back down, and it will never come off ever again. You will get 2 or 3 more decades out of that guitar, and I know a lot of people, epoxy's a dirty word and luthery, or the thing that I advocate for is making sure that the ends justify the means, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
there's no reason for me to charge $900 in repairs for bracing and retopping and all of that. If it's
On
a
a $200 guitar.
ceramic,
Yeah.
it just doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense. And
Right.
to a certain extent, another thing, a realization I had a year or two into this was, if a guitar is garbage, right? If it's a piece of garbage that you either bought from a store where it's been in disrepair for years, or a flea market, or whatever, or you literally pulled it from the trash or from Goodwill or from eBay or wherever, and it's been, unworkable for years, decades, who knows,
Mhm.
then it doesn't
Mhm.
really matter what you do with it. In the worst case scenario, it just ends up being garbage, which it already was in the first place. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
like, maybe that's where a lot of my like reverence of this kind of falls away, is like, to me, I'll jump right in and drill a hole in a vintage guitar. I don't care. If it
Mhm.
furthers the
Mhm.
mission of, the important thing is that this thing that was not functional will now be functional in some form or fashion
Right.
for
Right.
another good few decades. That's my
Yeah.
end goal. And not so much
Mhm.
preserving the absolute vintage specs of the thing, not so much
Mhm.
making sure that every part of the job is done immaculately to the letter. It's more about tailoring the job to what is in front of you and doing everything you need to do not to throw this back in the trash.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Um,
it's a healthy outlook. It's a cut and dry thing. If it's a
but
functional piece in the end, job completed and done.
the way that answers your question is, I find that having cheaper, maybe less couth fixes, and telling them like, this is the traditional expensive, good way to do it, and this is
Mhm.
the get her done, I need it for
Mhm.
the next, show, get a way to do it.
Mhm.
And then let
Mhm.
them make that decision. Do they want to pay $250 and have it done to the mark? Do they want to pay $75 and have it done, done
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a way that's solid? Not, I mean, the good way is going to be very solid to say, but
Sure. Sure.
um,
Sure.
but yeah, having those like softer blow options, and then they can decide,
Makes
and then
sense.
sometimes I've had people decide like, no, just put the strings on it. And I
Mhm.
tell them,
Mhm.
I incredibly advise against this. You've
Sign
got,
this waiver. I'm not liable of 12 strings snapping you in
yeah,
the eye.
I, all you can do is tell people in the end, it's their property and they can do with
That's
what
right.
they want to do with it. So,
That's right.
but
That's true.
honesty and having a more than just like, this is going to cost you, a billion gajillion dollars.
Excellent. Thank you for your time again, man. And take care. Best
Yeah,
of luck.
you too. Bye, Pat. I'll see
All
you
right.
soon.
Peace, amigo.